Correct.
Yes, that's billion with a B.
All right, everybody, we're ready. Sort of.
Sort of. As good as it's going to get.
Today will be fun. All right, how's it going? Put in a, hey, I can hear you. If you can hear us right now, that'd be great. Don't worry, you'll get the song of the day.
Oh, no.
We'll still do that. Don't
Hey,
worry. Well,
won't
not
you
yet.
play?
Not
Oh,
yet. Not yet.
Another. Sorry.
That's a little tease there, guys. All right, your Ben Joravsky show for Thursday, January 9th is just moments away. But before we get into this, we need to thank the following unions for jumping on board and sponsoring this program. Make sure I'm recording. Okay, I'm recording. All right, check 1, 2. Okay, that works. All right, the unions that sponsor this program, the International Association of Machinists and Aerospace, Non-Aerosmith Workers, Local 126 and District 8 sponsor this program. The International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, Local 9 are sponsors, as well as the International Union of Operating Engineers, Local 150. In fact, our guest today is from the Local 150. And, of course, today's Ben Joravsky Show is brought to you by our good friends at the Chicago Federation of Labor. Now the moment you've all been waiting for, the song of the day. Hit him with it, Benny.
Oh, won't you play another somebody loves somebody? Wrong song. Yeah, come on, D.
Will we ever get a current song of the day? No.
No, because I stopped listening to music in 1979. How many times I have to tell you that? I don't even know who Radiohead is.
The Ben Joravsky Show starts now. It is Thursday, January 9th, and live from the Chicago Sun-Times Chicago Reader Studio on Racine Avenue, this is the Ben Joravsky Show. Today on the program, no, not Radiohead. In these times, writer Miles Kampf-Lassin is back. Union man Ed Maher will join us. And it's another guide to getting high with Lisa Solomon of the Chicago Reader. And now your host, Chicago Reader columnist, Ben Joravsky.
Hello, everybody. Ben Joravsky here. We're calling this, oh, my beloved Democrats, Thursday. And here's why.
I thought you were going to say Chicago Bulls.
Oh, can we talk about how bad they are?
No, we can't.
Oh, they're terrible. Anyway, welcome back, Cotter. Yes, I was not here yesterday. I had to miss the show because we had a reader retreat. As everybody knows, I'm a columnist, a writer from a beloved Chicago Reader, have been for like 2,432 years. And we had a staff retreat yesterday to chart our future, D. It was a great time. We did a lot of serious discussion, but it was also one of these things where we got to know each other. We played these games. So these theater games, like Zip, Zap, Dob or something like that. Zip, Zap, Dob. You ever play that? He did, Miles has played it. You go zip, zap, dob. And then he has to go zip, zap, zob. And so you're in a big circle, and if you don't say zip instead of zap, you're out. If you point at the wrong guy, you're out. It's complicated. Anyway, needless to say, I was one of the first people to leave.
Oh, well, as long as you're not one of the first people to leave the airwaves again, you know what I mean?
No.
Still a show. Still a show.
Still a show, yeah. So anyway, it was a lot of fun and learned a lot. Maybe at some time during the day, Miles and I will play Zip, Zap, Zob, and we'll make you play as well. Anyway, while I was gone, the story broke about Some bad doings by my beloved Democratic Party. The story, let's give a shout out to reporters Dave McKinney and Tony Arnold over at WBEZ. Allegations of wrongdoing by leaders of my beloved Democratic Party. Oh, Dems, I give you my love. And this is how you repay me for years and years of unrequited love, Dave. I've been voting for Democrats forever. And this is what they do. Oh, yes. Wait, what is that in the background that I hear? It's my left of center friends, way left of center. Sam Holloway, Leonard Goodman saying, "We told you, Ben. We told you, Ben." Oh, God, I hate it when my lefty friends are right and I'm wrong. Anyway, all right, this particular case has to do with the ongoing investigation into House Speaker Michael Joseph Madigan, the most powerful man in the state of Illinois, the most powerful Democrat, I should say, in the state of Illinois. Actually, he may not be number two. Let me just rewrite that sentence. He's now the second most powerful Dem in the state of Illinois, and falling on the charts, I'd say. It's no doubt that J.B. Pritzker is the most powerful, and now it is J.B. Pritzker who runs the state.
You said he's the second, right?
Yes, Michael Joseph. Number two. Michael Joseph Madigan is number two, and maybe falling. He's doing everything he can to keep on his to keep his power. The story that McKinney and Arnold broke, it's a complicated one. Let me boil it down. They dug up, through a FOIA request, apparently, an email written by Mike McLean to two members of Governor Pat Quinn, our friend. Governor Pat Quinn comes on this show all the time.
Oh, Pat, you left one of your clipboards here last time you were in the studio.
Now that he's not governor, folks, he's gone back to his days where he gets people to direct action in government through signing signatures and all kinds of petitions and stuff. Anyway, Pat Quinn, when he was governor of Illinois back in 2012, Mike McLean wrote an email to...
That's that guy from Die Hard, right?
Who's from Die
Hard? Oh, that's
Hard?
John McClane, sorry.
Yeah, come on, this microphone. Anyway, let me just read to you how the Sun-Times, Tina Svandelis did a good job of summarizing what they unveiled. A WBEZ report on Tuesday revealed Mike McLean sent the email to two senior Quinn aides in a bid to win leniency for a worker in a disciplinary case. Are you following that, folks? It's complicated. Everything is complicated, and reporters only have so much space to condense everything, and it's just really hard to follow it, but I hope you follow that. So McLean had sent an email to two senior Pat Quinn aides in a bid to win leniency for a unnamed worker in a disciplinary case. In that email, McLean argued that the man that he was seeking leniency for, quote, has kept his mouth shut on Jones's ghost workers, the rape in Champaign, and other items. It's not clear what any of that is referring to, but the most sensational... Listen, ghost payrollers is one thing, but covering up a potential rape in Champaign, that's no joke, folks. That's criminal. And so apparently, somehow or other, the details have not come out, but essentially what they're suggesting is that they were trying to bury up evidence of a rape, that somebody was instrumental in burying that evidence, and that person should be rewarded for his loyalty to what? Burying to somebody who was accused of rape. He should be protected for that, rewarded for that, by having investigation charges dropped against him. It's like everything they say about government, the backroom wheeling and dealing of government, who you know, rules don't apply to everybody. They only apply to people who don't have clout. So even something as serious as alleged rape has no consequences if you know the right people. This is sort of the suggestion. These are only the details that we know. Of course, when McKinney and Arnold went looking for called all the players in the game. They all said, we don't know anything about it. We never heard anything about it. This email is 8 years old. Here's something you should know about the author of the email, Michael McLean. He is a former lobbyist and a Michael Madigan confidant. And he's under federal scrutiny as part of an ongoing investigation into the connections between Commonwealth Edison and the Madigan machine. Apparently, the feds are trying to figure out, follow me on this, folks, if ComEd put Madigan Associates on the payroll in exchange for their assistance or Madigan's assistance in passing favorable legislation like, I don't know, rate hikes, et cetera, and so forth. Anyway, when I got back from the retreat the reader retreat where I was feeling all good. We played those theater games. I was feeling very healthy and in connection with my fellow workers and feeling like, you know what, it's a good world. We did zip, zap, zop, and all those other kind of theater games and hugged and put our hands in the middle, said 1, 2, 3, reader forever. I come back to the real world, Dean. What did I see? Suggestion that my beloved Democrats were bearing up allegations or an investigation of a rape. And there were emails filling my email box from all kinds of Democratic politicians speaking out against it. Here's one tweet that went out. It was also on my email box, but the Chicago Sun-Times quoted the tweet from State Representative Kelly Cassidy, good friend of the show. She hasn't been on in a while.
No, she has not.
You know, ever since the Sun-Times put her on the front page, called her Wonder Woman, you notice she's been kind of, Ben, I'm too busy to come on your show. I am Wonder Woman. Anyway, with Elena Hampton, who did come on the show a couple weeks ago.
Make fun of her. That'll get her back on.
KC, you know we love you. All right, here's what Kelly Cassidy and Elena Hampton and Sherry Garrett as well had to say. If the reports are even partially true, this represents a conspiracy to conceal criminal sexual assault at the highest levels of state government. Yes, indeed. It's no joke, folks. It's like bit by bit, we're peeling back this onion. We're going to see what lies at the cure. Does not look good at the moment for my beloved Democratic Party. We got a great show today, everybody. Miles Kampf-Lassin will be here in these times, Ace Reporter. We're going to be talking Trump, Iran, pending war in the world, Democratic politics. Miles, a huge Bernie supporter. Maybe we'll give him an opportunity to address some of the points made by the Heartland Mamas.
Oh,
remember the Heartland Mamas?
Yeah.
All right, they were playing. They took down some of those Bernie bros.
What were some of the quotes there from the Heartland Mamas about people like Miles Kampf-Lassin?
Hey, Bernie bros.
Bernie bros.
Beep my hey.
Beep my hay?
Well, the hay was me saying, stop! This is a family show. No swearing, Heartland Mamas.
Beep my hay.
Beep my hay. Ed Maher, Union Man, will be here at 2 o'clock. Union news, updates, and all that good stuff. Like, we're looking ahead with the future. What does 2020 hold for the union movement in this country? Lisa Solomon, our reefer expert. She'll be back. She was here a couple of weeks ago. Very popular show. We're bringing her back. And she's got a mystery guest, D.
You're kidding.
No, she's bringing a mystery guest.
Whoa.
Yeah, whoa.
Get the bong out. Literally, because she's going to be talking about reefer.
She'll be talking a lot about reefer. That's Dennis's favorite part of the show. So a lot of political talk ahead of us. But before we do any of that, the young man from Alton. Oh, yeah. The man they call Dr. Doobie with the news.
Not Dr. Doobie. How's it going, everybody? My name is Dennis. Let's unpack the news happening in Chicago and or Illinois this afternoon. Actually, I just lied because there was no show Wednesday. We need to mention 2 stories that happened in Chicago and or Illinois yesterday.
Uh-oh, there was no pre-show prep on this. This is called a curveball.
You're being a little too honest. All right, Ben.
Zap, zop.
All right, Ben, we had a 2020 presidential candidate in town. I mean, I'm saying this like you didn't know because of course you knew. He's your favorite. Filthy rich Democrat presidential candidate Michael Bloomberg came to Chicago Wednesday.
Bloomberg's not even my top 5.
Yeah, right. He was here to pitch his jobs plan. The former New York City mayor also made a pitch to our current Chicago mayor, Lori Lightfoot, seeking her endorsement. But hey, it ain't going to be that easy, pal. Just ask their congressional candidate, Marie Newman. Am I right?
Yeah, absolutely. We talked about that on Tuesday. She's against Lipinski, our mayor is, but not necessarily for Marie Newman. Come on, take a stand.
In a 25-minute speech before supporters at Olive Harvey College on the far south side, the late entrant into an already packed Democratic primary race outlined what he called, quote, candidate Trump's empty promises, while also criticizing the president's handling of Iran. Here's the quote from Bloomberg, quote, in any crisis, it's imperative that the commander-in-chief think through all the implications of his actions or her actions with the help of her or his top advisors to not act irrationally or recklessly. And I certainly hope that the president does that. But unfortunately, as we all know, that's just not his nature. Ben, your thoughts, and because I know you were there, you love you some Michael Bloomberg. How was Bloomberg's speech?
Well, first of all, I wasn't there. I was again at the reader retreat. Zip, zap, zop.
Oh,
okay?
yeah. I bet Bloomberg will get down on some zip, zap, zop.
I'll tell you what, that zip, zap, zop is harder than it looks, okay? It's hard. I was telling you, zip, zap, zop.
I don't know what it is. You're going to have to explain what it is a little later.
All right. Well, you know what? We'll play the game with Miles. This is the other. We have two Miles, Miles Porter and Miles Kampf-Lassin, and you and myself will play Zip Zap Zop.
All right.
Okay. I'll explain it all then. Zip Zap Zop. So I was not at the Olive Harvey speech. In general, my attitude toward Michael Bloomberg is I welcome his participation in the race, and I'll tell you why. Politics ain't no joke, D.
That's correct.
All right. Donald John Trump has amassed tens of millions of dollars, and he already has an onslaught of advertisements, commercials, particularly on social media, on Facebook. He basically dominates Facebook. He owns Facebook. And so Bloomberg is a counterattack. Bloomberg has a lot of money. He's doing this thing very unconventionally. Instead of he's just like pretending as though there are no other Democrats in the race, and he's concentrating his onslaught of commercials against Donald Trump. So essentially what he's trying to do, his basic point is that this election is all about Donald Trump. It's a referendum on Donald Trump. And so everybody who there's a lot of people out there who just don't care who the nominee is. They just want to defeat Donald Trump. And they see Bloomberg's name, and they see him. He's coming right at them with the commercials that they can relate to in terms of criticizing Trump. And they may just go, you know what, I'm voting for Bloomberg. He's got the money. It worked for J.B. Pritzker.
I'm not a perfect person.
Yes, but you have a lot of money, and you can run a good campaign as a result. So I applaud him because it keeps Trump on the defensive. Why should all my Democratic friends, all my lefty friends go, Ben, too much money, it's dirty, it ruins, corrupts politics, it's corrosive. I agree with all that. But the reality, what are you going to lay down and roll over? You're just going to let Donald Trump walk to victory? It's like my beloved Democrats who just, Ben, help support the fair map. Oh, we're just going to let the Republicans take control of the state, huh? Because we want to be fair? When would Republicans ever do that? So the reality of the way the game is set up and played, D, you have to fight fire with fire. And Bloomberg's got money. He's bringing money in, and he's keeping alive sort of the anti-Trump coalition. So I welcome him in the race, although I doubt I'll ever vote for him.
So, yeah, Bloomberg was in town yesterday, and, yeah, he says he'll never vote for him. But maybe later Ben will show you his shirt that Bloomberg signed for him. Oh, my God, he won't stop talking about it. Another candidate in town, 2020 POTUS. Well, he wasn't in town. He was in the local headlines, rather. 2020 POTUS candidate Bernie Sanders made the local headlines. He weighed in on the current negotiations happening between the Chicago Teachers Union and Chicago public school officials over that $25 million that was promised for the district's longest-serving teachers, the veteran teachers, all right? Mr. $27 tweeted his support for the CTU, as he always does. Here's the tweet from Bernie. And because I haven't done it in a while, what the hell, Ben?
I was proud to stand with @CTU Local 1 in their strike to win the school resources Chicago's students deserve. Chicago public schools must live up to their agreement, bargain in good faith, and give veteran teachers the respect that they have earned.
Yeah, Bernie jumped. He was here when the teachers were on strike. He stood with the teachers. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean he's going to win the Chicago Teachers Union's endorsement. Stacey Davis Gates was in the studio. When was that? Tuesday, D. And she said that the union, she hadn't made a decision. She was going to follow her union on this one. Brandon Johnson, on the other hand, another union leader, and of course, the Cook County Board Commissioner has already endorsed Elizabeth Warren. So we'll see which way the teachers union goes, as it goes anywhere. But my guess is that Bernie Sanders has a lot of support among rank and file teachers. Again, he was there for the teachers when they went on strike. Actually, I think about Elizabeth Warren supported the teachers as well. I'm not sure any of the other Democratic candidates for president, I can't remember if they supported the teachers. So I'm not surprised that Bernie weighs in, and that dispute is a totally in-the-weeds dispute having to do with different interpretations, the union's interpretation and the Board of Education's Lori Lightfoot's interpretation of what was promised and what, as opposed to what was put into writing with the teacher's contract. And it's probably going to be adjudicated at some labor board down the road.
Oh, and I forgot there was one more quote from Bernie there I forgot to read.
$27.
A lot of Bernie bros on the Ben Joravsky show. A lot of Bernie bros.
Hey, one will be here in about 15 minutes.
One will be here in about 15 minutes.
And then there's the other story from Wednesday. And this guy's becoming a guilty pleasure of mine to cover. It's Cook County Democratic State's Attorney candidate Bill the Bro Conway.
Love him.
He has released another political campaign ad. This makes 2 ads in 1 week for Conway. So we clearly see a game plan here. We're more than 2 months away from the primary, and Conway is going hard in the paint with early online and television ads. Conway's opponent is incumbent state's attorney Kim Foxx. Yes, the same Kim Foxx who botched the infamous Jussie Smollett case. And yes, the same Jussie Smollett who faked his own hate crime sponsored by Subway.
Allegedly faked.
Allegedly faked his own hate crime.
There you go.
So with that hot, polarizing pile of political garbage sitting there waiting, you knew it would only be a matter of time until an opportunist rich enough to put out political ads came along and picked it all up. And that's Bill Conway. So we heard his first ad on Tuesday. It was pretty boring. Ben, what were your thoughts on that ad?
Well, okay, I need some help here. You keep referring to him as a bro, and I'm going to need a little millennial help. I had a sense in my head of what a bro is. And so I said to you, okay, Conway's a bro. And you said, yes, he's very bro-y.
Very bro.
And I said, oh, well, what kind of music does he like? This is, by the way, pre-show prep by Dennis and I. I picked him up today, by the way, folks. Long story.
Tackling the tough issues today. What is a bro?
So I go, D, because he says Conway's a bro. All right, so Conway is running against against Kim Foxx for state's attorney. Nobody had ever heard of him before, but he comes from money. So not unlike Michael Bloomberg, he can buy your attention, folks. He just hits the airwaves with all these ads. And so now people, they vaguely know who Bill Conway is. And so Dennis said, well, my analysis of Bill Conway is that he's a bro. And I said, okay, I think I know what a bro is. It's kind of like a millennial term, all right? Yeah. Back in my day, when dinosaurs walked the earth, I think they called them jocks. But so I'm not quite sure if a bro is a jock.
That's kind of the same.
Yeah. So I said, well, what kind of music does he listen? He must listen to. And then I just, folks.
That's tough. That's a tough thing to answer nowadays.
That's called ducking and dodging.
No, because rock music isn't really as popular as it was back in the day.
So I said, if he's a bro, he must listen to. And then I thought, folks, again, I'm at a disadvantage here because I stopped listening to rock music on a regular basis in 1979. I went to the only group that I could vaguely even think of that was remotely bro-y, and I said, Hootie and the Blowfish. And Dennis goes, no, man, bros don't listen to Hootie and the Blowfish.
Maybe in the 90s.
They listen to Radiohead. And I'm like, Radiohead?
A lot of bros listen to Radiohead.
I never even heard of Radiohead. Miles, you ever heard of Radiohead?
Boy, we are giving way too much time to this bro thing.
So anyway, I don't know what a bro is. So what is a bro?
Go figure it out. I don't know. Someone you pictured getting drunk after a Cubs game down in Wrigley Field. That's the way I look at it.
Miles, is that a bro?
Yeah.
Okay.
You know what I mean? And an early 2000s bro would listen to Nickelback. I don't know what the Nickelback equivalent is in 2020 because, I don't know, rock isn't as popular. But anyway, this is a political talk show.
Nickelback, right? Bernie?
Nickelback.
Oh, sorry.
Your thoughts on that ad, by the way, from Bill Conway? The original question.
Oh, yeah, the Conway ad. Yes, that original ad, now I'm going back in my time, was an interesting ad because it made it seem as though Bill Conway was going to be more sympathetic to the needs of people who were unfairly arrested and would look for justice in the system, when in fact the backlash to Kim Foxx is coming from the other side there, who are accusing, sort of the get tough on criminals side, that are accusing her of being too lenient on criminals, alleged criminals, people who are arrested, and that that Smollett-gate, her treatment of Jussie Smollett is indicative of that. So you would figure that somebody running against Kim Foxx in this primary would hammer on that theme, because that seems to be the prevailing theme for people who are against her. It seems like folks who do believe in a system, in being more fair to defendants and who have only been accused of crime as opposed to convicted of crime, people who are claiming we should be more fair to them would be for Kim Foxx. But he was he was like running it to the left of her. So it made no sense, that first commercial, I'm just saying. Unless he thought that Kim Fox was going to step down because of his investigation, in which case he would run as the great liberal. But, nah. So I didn't get the commercial. Remember, D?
All right. Well, on to his latest. I think you'll get this one because this ad reminds us of another unflattering Kim Fox story that we knew would come back to bite her. This came out in December, the time that Kim Fox decided to keep nearly $30,000 in campaign contributions from a 2016 fundraiser hosted by the now indicted 14th Ward Alderman, a.k.a. the guy who shook down a Burger King in his ward, Alderman Edward Burke. Let's hear what Bill the Bro has for us this time. Crack open an energy drink and give whoever's next to you a fist bump. It's the latest ad from Cook County State's Attorney candidate, Bill Conway.
Have you heard about Alderman Ed Burke's connections to Kim Fox? Burke threw a fundraiser for Fox at his house during her last campaign, raising big bucks. Then, Fox turned around and settled tax cases for Burke's corporate clients. Burke and his clients made millions thanks to Fox's deals. Now she says there's nothing wrong with her keeping most of the Burke-tainted money. Burke, Fox, isn't it time to turn the page?
All right. Now, this is a page taken straight from the Lori Lightfoot playbook. Mayor Lori Lightfoot, of course.
This little light of mine, I'm going to let it shine.
Was victorious in part, a large degree, because she was able to link her opponent, Tony Preckwinkle, in the runoff to Ed Burke. Nobody likes Ed Burke anymore, which is really interesting. A year ago, everybody loved Ed Burke. Right now, nobody likes him, okay? I was curious if Bill Conway was denouncing Ed Burke, I don't know, 2 years ago. Think he was denouncing Ed Burke 2 years ago? I don't think, oh, Mr. Burke, let me shake your hand. I've always been a big fan of yours.
Great Conway impression. That's good.
Mr. Burke, did I tell you I love your suit? So the only guy who was critical of Ed Burke 2 years ago was me, all right? You know what I'm saying? You know, guys who get fired from liberal radio stations for being too liberal. Those are the only people who were critical of Ed Burke then. And now it's easy to be. Everybody's critical of Ed Burke. Sort of like now, everybody's critical of Michael Joseph Madigan. And isn't that interesting how that goes? When there's blood in the water, oh, everybody's tough. Where are you when we need you? Anyway, so yeah, it's look, now this is the kind of ad that I would expect him to run. He's linking her. I'd have to take a deeper dive to see if there's any validity whatsoever to what he's talking about in terms of Ed Burke's property tax cases. Again, folks, Ed Burke for many years was a property tax lawyer. He handled appeals of a lot of wealthy downtown property owners got their taxes reduced by appealing to the Cook County assessor for a lower assessment, and as a result, everybody else paid more in taxes. Suckers and saps in Chicago thought that was okay. By the way, I'm just curious, could you do a Google search and see if Bill Conway ever spoke out about Ed Burke's property tax business back in, let's say, 2015 or 16 or...
That's a very specific thing to look up. You got to give me time here.
Yeah, negatory is what I would say on that one. So I'm just saying, okay? Hey,
Yeah, no, that's not on here.
Yeah, well, I'm not surprised. So fair is fair in politics, and so that I would say would be a more or less legitimate avenue of attack by Conway to go after. And let me just again point out, he's got a lot of money, folks. So you're going to hear his name a lot. There's other people running for state's attorney, by the way. Donna Moore is running for state's attorney, and Bob Fioretti.
Your guy, Fioretti.
Fioretti. And by the way, Bob Fioretti, my guy, I do appreciate.
Ben's ready for Fioretti.
Bob Fioretti was alderman. I must confess, folks, helped me on more than one TIF story. So Bob, I will always appreciate that. But Bob Fioretti, when he announced he was sort of running at Kim Fox from the right, talked about how too lenient she was on letting criminals go or people who are dangerous go. That was his accusation. And his lawyers are challenging her petitions. So he's doing the dirty work. Bill Conway is spending his family money running these commercials. Meanwhile, Fioretti's in court trying to get her.
But wouldn't you say? That is what's going on. But wouldn't you say that old Conway here is kind of taking all the credit here because he's going in public? He's kind of putting himself out there as the main opponent.
Yeah, he's using his money to broadcast himself and give himself a prominent position so that people who are against Kim Fox in general go, oh, I'll vote for the Conway guy.
Yeah, right.
You know what I mean? They may not know anything about him, but
So is Fioretti going to come out with some ads?
I doubt
on
it
Kim Fox?
because it cost money. That should have been my song of the day. Money. Instead
There's always tomorrow.
Hey, won't you play another somebody? Anyway,
I work with this guy every day, people.
so yeah, Fioretti. I don't think Fioretti can come out with commercials because he doesn't have the money. So what he's doing is a lot more practical. He's trying to win the old-fashioned way by knocking her off the ballot. And so if he's successful on that front, which I doubt he will be, but if he is, then Conway probably be the front runner because
Oh, what a bro.
what I need help with this bro thing. Okay.
Our friend Dragon Slayer 19 weighed in. He said, a bro is anyone that could be in a frat.
Okay. I could buy that. They would, but what kind of music would what kind of music would they be playing at a fraternity party in the year 20?
Chain smokers.
No way.
Yeah, I would.
A chain smoker.
Possibly.
And the chain smokers, that brings back memories of my great debate with Alderman Carlos Ramirez Rosa when I was saying Stevie Wonder, and he was going chain
We
smokers.
are all over the map today. All right, and finally, one public event scheduled for our Democratic Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker. Today, he's at Kennedy King College with Lieutenant Governor Juliana Stratton to discuss the Justice, Equity, and Opportunity Initiative.
All right, very good. And Miles Kampf-Lassin has entered the building. When we come back, we'll ask him what a bro is.
Oh, there we go. Let's just keep this confusing thing going. All right, it's the Ben Joravsky Show. Don't go anywhere. We're live from the Chicago Sun-Times. Miles Kampf-Lassin is back. We'll keep you posted on these stories as today's program rolls along. The Ben Joravsky Show is supported by Northwestern University's part-time master's program in literature and liberal studies. Students learn from dynamic and diverse faculty as they build advanced skills for critical analysis, writing, and research. Evening classes are held on Northwestern's Evanston and Chicago campuses. The spring quarter application deadline is January 15th. Learn more at sps.northwestern.edu/masters. Read the Chicago Reader to get up to speed on what's what in Chicago. Culture, food, arts and entertainment, weekly concert listings, weekly event listings, the environment, travel. I can continue, but you get the point. And for all of you Chicago political junkies, raw weekly columns on real city politics from Maya Dukmasova and our very own Ben Joravsky. The Chicago Reader, free to the public in newsstands throughout the city and online at chicagoreader.com. Read it now and be a more informed Chicagoan.
Second is what I would call the ethical costs. And the ethical cost is you have, as a person who was in the House of Representatives when we tried to pass the Shepard legislation that dealt with hate crimes, putting them on the books, that President Obama then signed into law, to then use those very laws and the principles and values behind the Matthew Shepard hate crimes legislation to self-promote your career is a cost that comes to all the individuals, gay men and women who will come forward and one day say they were a victim of a hate crime who now will be doubted, people of faith, Muslim or any other religious faith who will be a victim of hate crimes, people that of all walks of life and backgrounds, race, ethnicity, sexual orientation. Now this casts a shadow of whether they're telling the truth, and he did this all in the name of self-promotion. And he used the laws of the hate crime legislation that all of us collectively over years have put on the books to stand up to be the values that embody what we believe in. This is a whitewash of justice.
Commercial break over. Welcome back to the Ben Joravsky Show, live from the Chicago Sun-Times.
Miles Kampf-Lassin from In These Times in the studio just blew my mind with some information that I did not know. I've been extolling. First of all, Miles, welcome back.
Thank you.
And we have
Glad to be here.
Wait, D, you have an update for me? No. Before I go to Miles? Okay. Miles, when Maya was on the show on Tuesday, she came in raving about Nathan Miles and I are definitely going to take a deep dive on what's going on with Iran and how Donald John Trump seems determined to whip the country into war frenzy over with Iran. My humble opinion, let's see if Miles disagrees with me, is it's a good way for him to divert attention from his crimes and misdemeanors and impeachment cases. It's sort of 101 of how presidents do stuff like this. Oh, let's just have a war. That'll distract everyone. But there was a gentleman, Maya was extolling his virtues, named Nathan Robinson. He's a writer, and he wrote a very effective essay in Current Affairs, really analyzing the way people are manipulated, minds are manipulated at times of war. And he I don't know if you've read this essay, but he did a great job of, like, among other things, breaking down and analyzing the responses to the assassination or killing. Assassination is sort of like a legal world of the Iranian general by Elizabeth Warren's response. Dennis's favorite candidate, Mayor Pete Buttigieg.
Love him.
His response, just do that to tease Dennis a little bit. And Bernie Sanders. Did you see this? Okay. Anyway, and then Miles said he knows Nathan Robinson and they're friends. They know him. So we're going to bring Nathan Robinson on this show and have him talk at greater length about his theories on this. But I assume you share some of Robinson's theories in general, that we're being manipulated by all this.
So today there's going to be there's set to be a House vote on the War Powers Resolution, and the reason that this is so important is what we just saw in the past week. I mean, the amount of power that is held in the executive branch right now in terms of war making is uncanny, and that is not how our Constitution has set it up. You know, Congress is the only body that is constitutionally allowed to declare war. And certainly when you take out a general of another country, a country that has, tens of millions of people in it, you are committing an act of war. And that is what the United States did. And not only did Congress not authorize it, they weren't even consulted. And the consultation that was received just happened yesterday in a briefing that afterwards the response to it, of course, Democrats were up in arms about it, but even Mike Lee of Utah, Republican, and Rand Paul of Kentucky, two senators, called it anti-American because of how little information the administration was willing to provide about, they said there was an imminent threat. Just today, Trump said that Soleimani was planning to attack the U.S. Embassy. They didn't provide any information, apparently. They said, Lee and Paul said that there was no new information that they couldn't have seen in the newspapers before that was offered in this briefing. So even these consultations aren't even providing any information to the Congress. So that's why having a War Powers Resolution is so important, because we need to have some oversight over a maniac administration.
And so why do you think Donald Trump ordered the killing of the General Soleimani?
Well, I think a lot of this goes back to the Obama administration and what President Trump perceives as Obama's weakness on international affairs in general and in running the country. And the Iran deal, Trump loves a deal. He's always talking about deal making, and he's always consistently said that the Iran deal is the worst deal ever. We need to renegotiate this deal. And so that's been kind of his goal. He pulled out of the Iran deal, of course, in May of 2018. But even before that, what I want to mention here is that Democrats have kind of been involved in this as well. Back in 2017, there was a bill to increase sanctions on Iran, and 98 senators supported it. The only person that caucuses with the Democrats who voted against it was Bernie Sanders, and it's partially because it also increased sanctions on Russia. And at the time, of course, there was a lot of frenzy about we need to, take some acts against Russia, but it highly increased sanctions on Iran, which broke the Iran agreement. So there already was acts taken that would have undone the agreement that Democrats signed off of before Trump officially pulled out of it. So I think that's important to remember in all of this. But, when Trump did that, I think it was partially just because he wanted to do a redo of the Obama administration the same way he's kind of renegotiating NAFTA now. So I think that is one of the main reasons that he pursued this strategy with Iran.
Well, what is so confusing to just citizens in this country? I try to make sense of all this. Miles, it's hard enough to get people in this country to pay attention to local news that directly affects their pocketbook, literally, like with a property tax or a red light camera. It's very hard to get people to pay attention with that stuff. But when you get on international news, and it's a bewildering array of names that are hard to pronounce, countries that are distant, you don't even know where they are in many cases. It's as though compounding that is the fact that there's so much quote-unquote bipartisanship. It's like Democrats by and large and Republicans by and large have agreed. I say by and large, there's some notable exceptions. You mentioned Bernie Sanders. Let's think about this. In your lifetime, you were in high school with the invasion of Iraq in 2003. That was passed. You talk about having to give Congress more power and authority over a president. When they had the authority and the power in a limited way, they gave the president the green light. There were Democrats who voted for that. Hillary Clinton voted for that in 2008. When Obama was president, there were drone strikes that killed people throughout the Middle East, and Democrats supported that. So now, all of a sudden, Donald Trump orders the killing, the execution of an Iranian general by a drone strike. And Democrats are outraged. Many people are saying, I don't understand this. How do I distinguish one party from another if they have so much in common in foreign policy?
And we should mention, of course, Joe Biden voted for the Iraq war as well. So I agree. I mean, this is part of a long-running trend in American politics that the war machine tends to be bipartisan, and that I think has a lot to do with the interests that are at play. I mean, there's plenty of Democrats that are trying to appeal towards they're not trying to get votes from veterans or military officials. They're just trying to get support from the arms industry. They're trying to not rock the boat. I mean, you saw Jack Reed and Adam Schiff both come out with strong statements condemning Soleimani after this. Before, these people had not been, ringing the war bells before. But as soon as we take out a general from Iran, they're saying, he was a murderous, treacherous terrorist, essentially. These are the same people that voted for Trump's military budget. As we remember at the end of last year, it was a $738 billion military budget. They also voted for the NDAA. That there were two amendments that were incredibly critical to this National Defense Authorization Act. One was put forward by Ro Khanna, and that basically would have held back funding for a war in Iran, preventing tying Donald Trump's hands from doing exactly what he's been trying to do in terms of retaliation and escalation. And Barbara Lee put forward amendment that would have rescinded the authorization of the use of military force that was put in place after 9/11, that would have given Congress more power over deciding when to go to war. Both of those amendments were defeated with the help of Democrats. So I think that it's very fair to look at this and say, hey, both parties have been responsible in terms of being part of this large military buildup. And hey, people are sick of it. I think that this is a country that is beleaguered by war. I've lived my whole life basically in wartime. And, people are sick of it. This is such a lazy march to war. You remember under Bush, at least you had Colin Powell out there making, false statements in front of Congress and the UN talking about enriched uranium. And you had Judith Miller, in the pages of the New York Times spreading these lies. I mean, that was all, sick and anti-democratic, but at least it showed an administration that was trying to bring the public along with it. This is just Trump deciding, the reports are that he was given a number of different military options, and this was the most extreme of which they never thought, his advisors never thought he would choose to assassinate Soleimani, and that's the one he picked because this is the president that, has no history in military affairs and government and anything. He's just trying to kind of make a splash. So I don't want to psychoanalyze Trump, but I think that this is why it's so critical that there is some power over the executive branch when it comes to foreign policy, and why it's so critical that we get behind candidates that are adamantly anti-war and speak out and say, hey, it's always poor and working class people that suffer the most from war, both soldiers and civilians. It's never the rich, it's never the folks that are, beating the drums of war who have to suffer the consequences of it. So I think that those things are important for everybody to remember.
Well, I believe, I've said this before, that the main lesson that our leaders took from Vietnam is that we cannot have a draft anymore. Because if we have a draft and absolutely everyone is required to serve in the military and go to war, then it'll always be a strong dissent for military adventures. So what we have to do is go to a voluntary army, a voluntary system of defense, and that's the only way that they'll be able to continue to have wars throughout the country. That's my personal belief. I lived through the Vietnam War, the draft, and if just take a look at the amount of resistance, Miles, to the Vietnam War, people in the streets, thousands and thousands of people burning their draft cards because people had their life on the line. Fast forward to when you were a kid coming out of high school in 2003 or 2004, whenever you came out of Whitney Young, and George Bush invaded Iraq and had Colin Powell singing all kinds of songs at the United Nations. Yeah. There wasn't that much there was opposition, but there wasn't widespread opposition like we had in Vietnam. Why? In my humble opinion, because this generation was not facing conscription. They were not being forced to go fight the war. Somebody else was going to fight the war. And as long as you can do that, you can get away with a lot of stuff.
I agree, but I do think that there still is a draft right now, but it's what we call a poverty draft or a backdoor draft. And this is why you see in my high school, we had military recruiters on campus. We see that at public schools across the country, and that's why there's such a movement to take them off of high schools, because they're especially public schools, and they're especially the poorest schools, the poorest funded schools, where military recruiters target, because they think, these are kids that don't have many opportunities, they don't have jobs or, community programs or, bright futures ahead of them. So, hey, this is the perfect type of, and therefore they're people with less political power because they have less money. So they're not the people that are going to have the loudest voice in terms of opposition when it comes to debating issues of war and peace. And that's what we have right now. That's why the military is filled with, as I said, poor and working class people that are trying to get ahead, because the military offers some type of, social supports that, they'll pay for education, they'll, pay for health care, they provide things that should be basic social services, and they'll provide a career, and because there's such a lack and dearth of those options for so many of these communities, that's where we have a draft right now. But you're right in the sense that if it was across the board, there would be a very different response to matters of war and peace in this country. I think that that's a tragedy. I'm not trying to promote having an actual draft or conscription. I think that we need to reassess our national priorities. And, we have bases in hundreds of countries across the world. We have the largest military and the largest military budget in the world. And yet we're at war in, multiple countries. And yet we're not, under attack. There's no, existential threat to the United States. It's just a matter of, there's a war machine, there's a military industrial complex that we all know about. And you're right that it's not the first thing on everybody's mind right now. But you remember in 2008, that was the election of Barack Obama was largely around his opposition to the Iraq War because of how deeply that affected people. 4,500 U.S. soldiers died in that war. Have died. It's still going on.
The Ben theory of how Barack Obama got elected president, here we go. He participated in 2002 as a state senator, not a U.S. senator, in a protest in Chicago against the Iraqi war. I think it was 2002. I think that's when it was. He used that participation as his calling card to lefties in Iowa. And I was there in Iowa in 2008 when that went down. I know lefties really well. They went with Obama because in their mind, he was the anti-war candidate, and they prevailed. In a Democratic caucus in Iowa, lefties had a big say. They went with Obama, and then Black America woke up the day after the Iowa caucus and said, oh my God, a bunch of white people in Iowa voted for Barack Obama, and all of a sudden there was a groundswell. That's my theory of what went down. So you're absolutely correct. And then Barack Obama, remember, but he's very nuanced the way he said it. I don't know if you were paying attention back in those days, Miles, but he was like, well, it's not that I'm against all wars. I'm against this war.
Yeah, stupid wars, he said.
Stupid wars. It's like, oh, the smart wars, and so then when, the war continued throughout his entire 8 years, Miles, I mean, he didn't get us out of Iraq or Afghanistan.
No, and in fact, I mean, the only reason that there was a withdrawal at the end was because the Iraqi parliament voted to because they wouldn't agree to a legislation that would prevent American soldiers from being prosecuted in Iraq. That's what the U.S. always pushes for, because we don't want our soldiers to be, liable for laws in other countries and be, convicted of war crimes or what have you. So, the Iraqi legislature wouldn't agree to that, and that's part of the reason that there was a withdrawal at the end of Obama's term. Of course, it wasn't a full withdrawal because we still have troops there. Now the Trump administration is putting out letters saying that we're going to have a full withdrawal, and then, 10 minutes later saying, oh, that was a mistake. We didn't actually mean to release that. This is foreign policy, by the pants seat or whatever. This is just, these are people that are so unserious about our nation's priorities, that they are willing to, and I think you're probably right in some sense in terms of a distraction from domestic policy that's going on. But more critically, I think that this is just, there's no strategic core to what the president is doing right here, or his advisors, and you see it in how they're operating. I mean, I think it's definitely a positive thing that in yesterday's speech, Trump did not announce any, new attacks or all-out war. And in fact, he said that he wants NATO to get involved, which NATO, that's a scary proposition. It could, proceed in a way that allows American troops to leave Iraq, which I think would be, of course, be the best result from this. But I don't think we should take any comfort in the fact that, we have a president right now who seems to have no idea of how he's planning to operate in terms of foreign policy.
No, it is ironic that he bring NATO in. He's bashing NATO left and right.
Exactly.
And all of a sudden when he needs them, all right, this is what's baffling about it. If I had one complimentary thing to say about Donald John Trump, it was that he seemed to resist the overtures of the warmongers. It just seemed that he had a general reluctance to it. He himself made no pretense that he supported the Vietnam War. He sat out the Vietnam War. I think he had bone spurs. Don't quote me on that. I get his excuse mixed up with Donald Cheney's. Okay, I know he had something wrong with it. I think it was bone spurs. I think Dennis is nodding. Okay, it was bone spurs. So he sat out the Vietnam War, and he's not like really apologetic about it. He was like, I was partying at the time, Yeah. And he would denounce foreign Middle Eastern wars, endless wars. There was a sentiment of support among true believing Trumpsters, like when he would denounce the deep state. He said, part of the reason you can't trust the things they're saying about me is because they made up all that stuff to justify us going into war in Iraq. And that resonates with a lot of people. Yeah. Part of it resonates with me. So there's that element of Donald Trump, that anti-war Trump, which is bizarre because then he would just say all kinds of stupid stuff on Twitter that was volatile, that I kind of like, all right, led me to believe that maybe he would stay out of war. And then he shoots Soleimani. I'm like, does he know what he's doing?
Yeah. Well, he said fire and fury all these times. I mean, I don't think that he also appointed John Bolton as National Security Advisor. I mean, people cheered him for firing him, but I mean, he hired him. This is not somebody I think that has really shown themselves. I mean, he's expressed some, mild opposition to endless war and such, but he's drone strikes are continuing. Look at the United States involvement in the Yemen war, the Saudi-led Yemen war.
I didn't say it was Daniel Ellsberg, okay? I just said that all right, but continue your thought.
But so, I mean, this is, I think, all speaks to why we need somebody who is finally going to say that this bipartisan march toward war needs to come to an end, and we need to reassess, as I said, our priorities and take some of this massive military budget, redistribute it into programs that are actually going to benefit the people in this country and rebuild infrastructure, do all the things that we know. This is what candidates talk about, and this is what voters in Iowa and New Hampshire and Nevada and South Carolina are talking about. They're not right now, their number one concern. Of course, they're watching the news. They're seeing this and scared of, Trump's finger on the trigger. But their number one concern is them and their family's well-being and being able to have a better future. And the only way to take care of those concerns is by actually ramping up our domestic spending and putting money into programs that will help working people. And towards that end, just today you saw in Congress, as I mentioned, the House is supposed to vote on this war powers resolution. In the Senate, Bernie Sanders introduced another bill that was kind of a sister bill to it that has 12 co-sponsors, including Chuck Schumer, and including Elizabeth Warren, former presidential candidates Kamala Harris and Kirsten Gillibrand are on board with it. And basically what this would do is deny the Pentagon any funds for any unauthorized use of military force against Iran. And the House version of it has 58 co-sponsors. So, these are very strong
Any Republicans?
bills.
I haven't seen
No, not on either.
Yeah.
Well, not yet. I do think that it's possible, in terms of co-sponsors, it's quite possible that you'd get a Mike Lee or a Rand Paul to support something like this, considering how vociferous they were and how angry they were in terms of responding to that briefing yesterday. So we haven't seen them sign on as co-sponsors yet, but it just got introduced this morning. So this is what we saw. Ro Khanna introduced the House version of it. These are the two individuals we saw, Bernie Sanders and Ro Khanna, previously last year get the War Powers Act invoked to stop the Saudi war in Yemen. The U.S.'s support for it. The first time in 47 years that act was actually invoked. Of course, Trump vetoed it. I think that was his first veto, or at least one of his first vetoes. But we've seen, the ability of us, anti-war fervor in Congress to get enough support to, restrict this president's hands. I think that that's the important goal to achieve this time around as well.
Well, generally in this country, when somebody speaks up against the military, they're bashed as being soft, bashed as being weak, bashed on being too sympathetic, to fill in the blanks, whatever demonic foreign nation is being used to keep the masses in line. And in 2016, all the realists in the Democratic Party were saying about Bernie Sanders, just wait, if he's the nominee, Trump's going to come at him with pictures of him. We've talked about this, but pictures of him shirtless in the Soviet Union, hanging out with the Sandinistas. Trump has blown up so many of the conventional wisdom of politics in this country with his behavior, with his tweets. And so do you think in a situation like now where Trump is trying to fire up the country about the threat of Iran, that it's politicians like Bernie Sanders could survive and win political survival, I'm talking about, by denouncing military buildup, by denouncing war? Or do you think that old-fashioned impulse to annihilate any peacenik will take hold?
I'll just say that when you talk about supporting the military or speaking out for the military, there's 30,000 veterans that are sleeping on the street right now. Bernie Sanders has been on the Veteran Affairs Committee. He put forward one of the most pivotal pieces of pro-veterans legislation. He actually co-authored with John McCain that would that has helped to boost funding for the VA and provide more support for veterans. But most importantly, I think that this is you see that in terms of the Democratic primary, more military families are supporting through donations Bernie Sanders than any other candidate. He is somebody who has given, it's very clear where he stands. There's no equivocating or flip-flopping when it comes to how he has approached these issues throughout his career. He voted against the Iraq War. As we said, he's voted against the Gulf War as well. He voted, and he's voted consistently to against every one of Donald Trump's military budgets. The only person running for president, the only person in Congress running for president who's done that. That I think shows a commitment, and I don't think that it comes from a place. People always say, if you don't support war, you're not supporting the troops. I don't think that is that really will play out. I think that you're no doubt what you said about the RNC and the Republicans and Trump trying to paint Bernie Sanders, if he becomes the nominee, as some type of a foreign. I mean, I just watched this PBS documentary on McCarthy and McCarthyism, all about how they painted all these Alger Hiss, all these people as subversives and foreign agents. I have no doubt that when it comes to the Sandinistas and Nicaragua or the Soviet Union, they're going to throw it all at him. But look at Donald Trump. I do think showed the limits of those type of attacks. You could throw everything at Donald Trump, and he's kind of Teflon Don, because he just kept saying what he was saying and saying, oh, don't listen to them, forget all about that. And Bernie Sanders at least has a multi-decade career and record to run on that has been one of consistency and supporting in Nicaragua freedom fighters who were resisting and outside U.S. funded dictatorship. I don't think that is as much of a liability now as maybe it was in the another era in the 70s or the 80s or the 90s. So I do think that there's less of a liability in terms of Bernie's strong anti-war stance.
I'll take it one step further. Donald Trump has waged political war against, quote unquote, the deep state. He has done more than any politician in my lifetime to undercut the credibility of the CIA and the FBI. And it's bizarre because he's a tough on crime Republican, but he got up and held a press conference and said he didn't know who he believed, Putin or the FBI, in terms of hacking the computers. Yeah. And he's still the number one favorite of Republicans. Yeah. So I can't think of one lefty in my lifetime, I've known a lot of lefties, Miles, who's done as much to undercut the credibility of the FBI's CIA. So I think it would be, I've seen Republicans do a lot of hypocritical things in in my life, but to having invested so much into denouncing our national intelligence agencies and then turn right around and call Bernie Sanders weak on the military would be the height of hypocrisy, mixed messages. I just don't think it would.
Well, and I don't think that's. I think that what we're seeing now, honestly, is less of the Republicans turning on Bernie Sanders, but as we've seen these new polls come out, and we're less than a month away from Iowa, we're starting to see a different faction of the political sphere starting to turn their ire on Bernie Sanders, and that is folks from the Obama world, the centrists, the establishment, that are realizing that this is a strong possibility, if not a likelihood, that he is going to win at least one of the early states and could therefore get some real momentum going towards winning the Democratic nomination. Of course, Biden is still the odds-on favorite in a lot of ways. He's leading in national polls, but when you start to look into these early states like Iowa, New Hampshire, Nevada, as I mentioned before, Sanders' chances look pretty high. And as we've seen in the past, as you just laid out about the history with Obama, once you win Iowa, if you do, that can really start to change the dynamics of the race. So we saw a number of things. I mean, Rahm Emanuel, for example, Obama's former chief of staff, of course, our former mayor here, came out strong just the other day and said, it's going to be a huge liability if we have Bernie Sanders as our nominee because of his stance on Medicare for all. Of course, Rahm's Wall Street group that he works for is right now profiting off of the very healthcare system that would be threatened by universal healthcare system. So I don't think there's much of a surprise there, but I think that the fact that he is coming out like this shows that they're starting to get a little bit more worried. There's also, Daily Beast report that's all about how folks around Obama, a lot of these sources were unquoted, but they're starting to wring their hands. They're getting worried. Neera Tanden, the head of Center for American Progress, which is kind of a centrist think tank, she's been very clear in her anti-Bernie Sanders views. She said money doesn't translate to votes, basically. So to say that, Bernie's 5 million contributions and $36 million he got in the last quarter doesn't really mean much, kind of basically write that off. And another one called Bernie a zombie candidate. Another said he can't beat Trump because he's just too vulnerable. I mean, this is the type of attacks that we have not seen so far, and they're not coming from Republicans, they're coming from fellow Democrats. And I don't think it's surprising or a coincidence that it's happening right now, because they're starting to see read the tea leaves and see that Sanders has momentum right now. That's the dynamic and the way that this race has been going over the past few months. And there's a real possibility that a month from now we'll be talking about, the future path towards the nomination for Bernie Sanders.
And I tell you, if this were 2012, being called the zombie candidate would have been pretty hot. Awesome. Zombies were hot about 8 years ago. You know what I mean?
What happened?
They
I don't
had a
know.
rough time of it.
Walking Dead?
Walking Dead went off the air.
Ed Maher, my next guest, is in the studio, so we're going to take a break and bring him on. But Miles, I have to tell you, I got a feeling we'll be talking about this next week based on what you said. I don't see a denunciation of healthcare for all as really being smart strategy for the Democrats. You might say water it down and say we have to wait before we get health care for all, but pretty much everybody I know, and I know a lot of people, like, except for the hardcore, I guess call them pro-market people who just hate the thought of the government doing anything. Pretty much everybody I know wants health care, and I just think that's a totally losing strategy for the Democrats, just universally, unilateral, just denounce health care for all, and
And it's no surprise this is coming from Rahm Emanuel, who, as we know, he's been railing against you. He was the person in the Obama administration who said that Obama shouldn't even do the Affordable Care Act because it was too much of a liability. So before I go there, I want to give a shout out to some articles, if I can, at in these times. Check them out. Sarah Lazar, my wonderful coworker, has written a couple pieces that you can find on a lot of the things I talked about this kind of bipartisan march towards war and why we need to be critical of both parties when it comes to war making. Also, why we need to focus on climate change as a major issue, not just war making. We also have dueling essays about what a Bernie Sanders versus an Elizabeth Warren presidency would look like right now up on the homepage at In These Times. So check those out. And then I'm going to be coming out with a series kind of looking in detail at some of the billionaires that are involved in running our democracy right now, and kind of taking a deep dive into them. So that'll be coming up in a couple weeks. So look out for those.
Couple weeks?
Yeah.
So you won't be ready for talk about next week.
I could probably talk about it next week. We'll talk about it.
All right, I know what we'll be talking about next week. Thank you very much, Miles.
Thank you, Ben.
Ed Maher on deck. We'll bring him on when we return. Did you know that 40% of the people in Illinois opt to be cremated? Well, it's true. And Chicagoland Cremation Options honors their wishes by providing cremation services directly to the general public. Chicagoland Cremation Options provides an affordable, ethical, and easy cremation arrangement, whether in person or online. Save thousands and streamline the process by going directly to Chicagoland Cremation Options. It's a family-owned business operated by my good friend, Douglas Klein. Here's how you reach them. ChicagolandCremationOptions.com. One more time, ChicagolandCremationOptions.com.
It's Chicagoland's adult entertainment playground. It's the world-famous Admiral Theater, 3940 West Lawrence Avenue. The Admiral is homegrown from Chicago, and it's the most conveniently located club in all of the city. 15 minutes from the O'Hare Airport in downtown Chicago Loop. Voted Chicago's best strip club, the Admiral has showgirls galore and a variety of adult entertainment shows. The world-famous Admiral Theater, open every day from 7 p.m. to 6 a.m., 3940 West Lawrence Avenue. For events, showtime, and other information, visit AdmiralX.com. Must be 18 years of age or older to enter.
I believe that Pittsburgh and my native town of Scranton and my hometown of Wilmington and Claymont, they represent the cities and towns that make up hardworking middle-class Americans who are the backbone of this nation. That's not hyperbole. the backbone of this nation. I also came here because, quite frankly, folks, if I'm going to be able to beat Donald Trump in 2020, it's going to happen here. It's going to happen here.
How did you go from sharing stories over the years to deciding to write a book?
Good question, Mayor. Good question.
Madam Secretary, you talk a lot about the mothers of your friends, where you went to their houses and you knew that they were going to be kind and generous and supportive of you. So that theme of women being present and how they make a difference, talk a little bit about that and how that, again, animated some of the selections that you made of people in the book.
That's a great question, Mayor, because I wanted to include women who I could distinctly remember the impact that they had on me. And obviously historical figures. I never knew Helen Keller or Anne Frank or Maria Tallchief or Amelia Earhart, but as a little girl, they made a big impression on me.
All right, everybody, stop playing Zip Zap Zop. We got a show to do.
Yeah, no zip zap zop.
Hour number 2 of your Ben Joravsky Show for Thursday, January 9th is just moments away. But before we get into that, we need to thank the following unions for jumping on board and sponsoring this program. Unions like the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, Local 9, the International Association of Machinists and Aerospace Workers, Local 126 and District 8, the International Union of Operating Engineers, Local 150, and, of course, today's Ben Joravsky Show, hour number 2. And hour number 1, brought to you by our good friends at the Chicago Federation of Labor. Hour number 2, let's go. It is Thursday, January 9th, and live from the Chicago Sun-Times Chicago Reader Studio on Racine Avenue, this is the Ben Joravsky Show. In this hour of the program, Union man Ed Maher is back, and it's another guide to getting high with Lisa Solomon of the Chicago Reader. And now your host, the last person you want giving you advice about getting high, Chicago Reader columnist Ben Joravsky.
Yeah, I talk so much about it. I haven't done it since 1980. Ed Maher in the studio, operating engineers, Local 150, a regular guest on our show. Before we bring Ed on, you got an update for me, D?
Absolutely. I do here 2 updates, 1 local, 1 national. First up, the local, and it's on all of this damn dirty Illinois corruption. Democratic leaders from the southwest side and nearby suburbs on Tuesday tapped freshman state rep Selena Villanueva to replace former state senator Martin Sandoval, whose resignation took effect New Year's Day, 3 months after federal agents raided his state capitol office. Villanueva, 34 years old, was appointed in July 2018 to an open house seat for the 21st District and ran uncontested for a full term that November. Last spring, she was one of the House sponsors of the legalization of recreational marijuana. So congratulations to State Rep Selena Villanueva.
She just became a state rep. Now she's a state senator. There's other people like 10, 15, 20 years for that promotion.
Now, Selena, you're a freshman here, so I'm assuming you're so far on the right track. But please, don't be shady.
Okay, good advice.
It's the last thing we want, all right? And now to the national news. We have 2 2020 presidential candidate updates here. First up, well, according to Ben, he's my favorite candidate, Mayor Pete Buttigieg.
Just teasing. Dennis is a Bernie bro all the way.
Mayor Pete, we had our Illinois delegate elections here, and Mayor Pete failed to secure delegates in Illinois.
I'm a little surprised by that. I thought he would be a little more organized than that. It's a very complicated. We're going to have the political know-it-alls, Jacob Capital, explain the whole process tomorrow. I'll be in the studio, executive director of the Cook County Democratic Party. He's going to go through the whole process of what candidates do to get delegates, and if they don't have a slate of delegates, how they get delegates if they win. So it's, like everything else in primary politics, get a little confusing. But it's a sign of organization and support in a state if a Democratic presidential candidate has the connections and contacts to line up a slate of delegates who will support him or her. Usually they're officials, elected officials, or volunteers who are strongly committed to the Democratic Party. Union people, a lot of union people will sign on to various candidates. So generally, Ed and Dennis, it's a sign that a candidate is well connected in a particular state, in Illinois, I'm talking about, if he or she can put a slate together. The fact that Mayor Pete didn't put a slate together suggests to me that he's not built the contacts in Illinois that you would expect. Like a Joe Biden has a full slate.
It's a little bit surprising just because of the proximity of Illinois to Indiana. You know, you'd figure that a lot of the strength would come from states that are nearby that might be familiar with him from his time as mayor of South Bend.
Yeah, absolutely. That's another point. So, but he's not afraid to come into Chicago and for fundraisers and so forth. So taking Chicago money is a little different than actually building a network of support. I know Biden has a full slate. I'm pretty sure Bernie has a full slate. Elizabeth Warren has a full slate. We'll get into all this with Jacob tomorrow. He'll have the full list.
And this one's pretty fun here. Another 2020 presidential candidate update. Senator Amy Klobuchar addressed a wide range of issues during her appearance before several hundred students at the College Convention 2020 on Tuesday. But perhaps the biggest applause line came when she recited the names of all 50 states in about 30 seconds. I have the video here. We're going to play it. Okay. And I think this could be a challenge for some of our guests here in the Ben Joravsky. Maybe this is our 2020 Ben Joravsky Show new segment here. So let's listen to Amy Klobuchar recite all 50 states in 30 seconds. And you better believe I'm going to ask Ben to do it too. Here we go.
In Virginia, we're with an incredibly diverse slate of candidates. I didn't even know there were people from Virginia. Maybe I'll try every state. Alabama, Alaska, Arizona, Arkansas, California, Colorado, Connecticut, Delaware, Florida, Georgia, Hawaii, Idaho, Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, Kansas, Kentucky, Louisiana, Maine, Maryland, Massachusetts, Minnesota, Mississippi, Missouri, Montana, Nebraska, Nevada, New Hampshire, New Jersey, New Mexico, New York, North Carolina, North Dakota, Ohio, Oklahoma, Oregon, Pennsylvania, Rhode Island, South Carolina, South Dakota, Tennessee, Texas, Utah, Vermont, Virginia, Washington, West Virginia, Wisconsin, Wyoming.
Whoa. I'm no longer a Bernie bro.
Now, that's all well and good, but think about all the things you could have been doing instead of standing in front of a mirror with a list of states trying to memorize it. It's got to take hours and hours to figure that out.
Well, I have to tell you, as the more confession of my geeky side, when I was a kid, I had a map of the United States on the wall. So this is a long, long time ago when I was a kid. And
yes, it was.
I would...
He's old, guys.
I'm old. But I would stare at that map before I went to bed at Maher, and I memorized, I could tell you, back in like 1965, 66, every state, every capital. I mean, I remember it. It's like, over time, it's lost. So I could not do that in a minute. What about you? Could you just...
Yeah, I used to be really good at geography. We had a National Geographic Geography bee at my grade school, and I won it a couple times.
Yeah, would you study maps? It's kind of a geeky thing to do.
Can we put 30 seconds on the clock and have you do it?
There used to be a song with the states, but it's been a long time. I've found many other interests.
There's
in
a
the years
comedian.
since.
Dennis and I heard the guy. Who is it? The one he has this hilarious bit about giving nicknames to. Abbreviating states. Did I listen to that with you?
I don't think that was me.
Oh my God, this guy is funny. Like, the people think it's easy to abbreviate a state. Just get it down to two letters, and then anyway, I can't remember who it is. All right, let's get down to serious business. Ed Maher, no more goofing around.
Can you do the alphabet backwards or anything fun like that?
I can't do anything.
Alphabet backwards, go.
No, Z. There we go. Z-A, and then a bunch in the middle. No, can't do anything like that. I used to be able to, I think I still could tell you every single NBA championship team going back to 1960.
Wow.
I know, that's weird. A lot of weird stuff, but
you could name the 2019 Chicago mayoral candidates pretty well last year. You did pretty well on that.
That was tough. There were 14 of them, Ed Maher.
I remember.
And so anyway, all right, let's move on to more important things. I got three things I want to talk to you about today.
Sure.
Lisa Solomon coming in. We're going to do a reefer deep dive. But let me just start with a general thing. How the legalization of marijuana in the state of Illinois is affecting your rank and file.
I mean, it's so far there have just been a lot of questions, and it has created a lot of uncertainty within the industry. All the unions maintain drug testing programs. You know, we're all committed to a drug-free workforce, a safe workforce, because in construction, you know, the folks who are intoxicated who create an accident, it's very common that they're not the one that gets hurt. It's somebody else who was working next to them. So safety is something that we're all extremely committed to, and drug testing is an important part of that. Now, one of the laws that was passed after the legalization of recreational marijuana was the Illinois Privacy in the Workplace Act, and that had a part that prohibited any employer from denying employment to someone for use of a lawful substance outside of work premises, things like that. So with that, it became sort of more and more challenging for employers to administer a test that included cannabis and not hire someone because they failed the cannabis portion, because the onus would then be on them to prove that to prove that the person was intoxicated when they came in, something like that. So the pre-hire drug testing in the construction industry for cannabis is a lot of contractors, a lot of contractor groups are no longer going to be doing that. They're just removing that from the panel. So the one of the problems with testing is that the technology for intoxication, I was just talking to Lisa about it, and it sounds like she knows quite a bit more about this than I do, and I'm excited to hear more about it, but it's a little bit more challenging to find out, whereas you can do a test for alcohol and find out if somebody is under the influence right now. You know, you want to be able to do something like that with marijuana as well if you are in a position where you want to say that somebody's intoxicated, because I think you're going to see more and more and more people using recreational marijuana or things like CBD products that also have THC, or, you know, aren't supposed to have THC but still have some THC in them. But so it's created a lot of uncertainty. But in the construction industry, especially in the operation of heavy equipment, I mean, we don't want intoxicated workers at the controls of any kind of heavy equipment at all. And so we are committed to drug testing and to ensuring that every one of our members is drug free. And, you know, those who have problems, and across society there are, you know, folks who need help, and we provide, you know, treatment options and things like that for our membership. But the idea that a lot of folks won't be tested for this stuff across the construction industry, and I think in a lot of other industries, you know, it's something that requires a lot of thought. It's challenging. Just the things that marijuana is different because it's a fat-soluble drug, so it can be in your body even while you're not intoxicated, and that just makes things so much more difficult when trying to hammer this peg into the hole that's, you know, with all the other drugs that you typically find in a drug panel. And now that it's legal, it's just, I think it's going to be the Wild West for a little while until maybe some more advanced testing technology comes out, because at the end of the day, marijuana is legal just as alcohol is. And it can also intoxicate people and put them in a position where they're not safe to do certain things, like operate heavy equipment. So, you know, it's we're going to have to find a balance, and hopefully the testing technology moves along rapidly, because that would make life a lot easier. And hopefully, if something like that happened, they could bring the federal law in line with state laws, and I don't know, just make things easier for everyone, because things like CDLs and crane certifications and apprenticeships are all governed by federal laws.
What do you mean by CDL?
A commercial driver's license. So like a truck driver, they have to take physicals that are approved by the United States Department of Transportation. So all the definitions and all the requirements that go along with that are governed by the United States Department of Transportation, which is and the associated federal laws. So if you have a CDL, you can't smoke marijuana. It's zero tolerance for marijuana. It's a banned substance. It's an illegal substance. Same thing with nationally accredited crane licenses. Same things with apprenticeships that are governed by the United States Department of Labor and associated federal laws. So there's a lot of there are a lot of really murky things that are created by the disconnect in state laws versus federal laws, as well as the inability to really accurately test for intoxication. Though it sounds like I might be a little bit off on that. I'm excited to hear more about it.
Lisa has to say that.
She's writing stuff down, and I bet it's going to be good.
She's our reefer expert. Every show has to have one.
Do you have a business card that says that? Because you really should.
Reefer expert. Did you have any concern when marijuana became legal, Ed, that because of the contradiction between federal law and state law when it's legal, that people who shouldn't be smoking marijuana would be, enticed into doing it? Well, it's legal on the state level, not thinking that, of course, that it's still illegal on federal level, not thinking that it could impinge on their ability to get a commercial driver's license or operate heavy equipment or be a pilot or et cetera and so forth. Did you have concern about that going into this?
Yeah, I mean, it's confusing. And the emergence of CBD products, has made it even a little bit more challenging, because over the course of the past year, we've had a lot of members. CBD, I mean, I've never used a CBD supplement, but I hear that it's basically good for what ails you. Seems like I've heard from somebody that CBD is good for just about anything that there is. And they market all these no THC or THC-free CBD products, and you can buy them at the gas station, but people are taking these, and there's a small amount of THC in there because the FDA doesn't regulate any of this stuff because it's not federally legal. And so people are failing drug tests for THC and saying, "Oh, it said it was THC free." We've had more than a few of those things happen. So it's communicating a really, really confusing situation to our members. Like, yeah, it's legal, or yeah, it's going to be legal, and yeah, this says no THC, but it's just because it says it on the label that the guy at the gas station told you so doesn't mean it's legit. So your job is dependent on you being sober at work. So do that, be that. At the end of the day, that's what we've had to tell our members is you can still be fired. You can still be disciplined for being intoxicated by a substance that's legal. So don't anybody run out there and think that you can just be smoking a doob in the cab of a piece of equipment, because you can't. And we don't want that. Yeah. I mean, we represent these workers, but we want the safety of a construction site is paramount to everything else.
Yeah. I have many friends of the police officer persuasion, and they're in the same position. I'm like, guys, you can't smoke this stuff. I mean, because they do regular drug testing, police officers, firefighters as well. And then it gets into the issues of when you can drink for the test. I got friends who are oh my goodness, I could tell you so many stories, Ed, where they call me for advice, which is so funny because I really don't know anything. They should call Lisa Solomon. Ben, I smoked a joint yesterday. It's in my system. How do I know? Yeah.
Sorry about that.
I eat a lot of poppy seeds.
Yeah. Somebody eat poppy seeds. Anyway, I have no idea. Well, that's Lisa Solomon. This is something we'll watch. I'll bet you there's going to be some litigation that comes out of this, some lawsuits that are going to come out of this. I do believe this will be one offshoot. I'm a big proponent of legalizing. I was calling it for years, but I'm with you 100%. There's some professions where I don't want the people high. I don't want them drunk. I don't want them high on cocaine or anything. Right. I want them sober. Operating heavy, driving. Did you see the Denzel Washington movie where he's the pilot? He's taking cocaine.
Flight.
Was that what it's called? Flight?
I think it was called Flight.
That was a hell of a great movie where he turned the plane
that's a
upside
really
down.
bad example because he was drunk and on cocaine and he still landed that plane.
He turned it upside down and landed it.
I think I sending the kids the wrong message.
He's Denzel. He can do anything, Ed Maher.
He really can.
Anyway, I'm like, I don't want my pilot high.
No.
But anyways, we'll be watching this one. All right. You were talking about some pension issues.
Yeah.
That were facing union folks in the coming year. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot going on in Washington, of course, but there's something that's kind of slipped through during the holidays. A couple of Senate Republicans, Lamar Alexander and Chuck Grassley from Tennessee and Iowa, respectively, have put together a plan for pension reform, and it's kind of flying under the radar for a lot of people, but it's essentially meant to eradicate multi-employer pension plans in the United States. Currently, there are about 10 million workers who are part of a multi-employer pension plan, and there are about 13% of those where those plans are, going broke. They're going to run out of money, including one gigantic Teamsters fund, the Teamsters Central States Fund. And so there are about 1.3 million workers that are at risk of, having to take lower pension payments when they retire as kind of like a settlement thing through the trust fund, which is essentially like the FDIC of pensions, like a federal insurance thing. So the Republicans in the Senate have wrapped their arms around this as a reason to rescue pensions in the name of saving, this 13% of workers. But their plan to do so is to put regulations and actuarial limitations on the remaining 87% of all the plans that would put every healthy pension plan into a critical zone. So it doesn't save anyone, but it kills all the survivors. It would limit what pension plans can assume their rate of return to be, putting it down to the corporate bond rate, which is like 4% when actual performance is usually, closer to 6 or 8% on investments, and just kind of pull a few sneaky little levers, create a tax to take out of retirees' pensions, like up to 10% that they just take out and mail to the government to put into a trust fund to rescue, other pension funds. So penalizing healthy pension funds to not even bail out, but kind of pay a parachute to participants of unhealthy ones. So it's something it's gathering a little bit more attention in Washington and among the union movement, but it's something where it will put every multi-employer pension participant into a decline where at some point their pension fund is going to go broke. It puts restrictions on union construction or contractors, like the contractors who pay into these pension funds, puts them in a spot where they can't get out of these pension funds, and the withdrawal liabilities, the amounts that they'll have to pay to get out, are higher than ever. So it's basically troubled pension funds fail, healthy pension funds fail, pension signatory contractors fail, and the survivors are all basically killed. So the Republican Party has been pushing this really hard. We've been working with our members to reach out to their Congress folks, their senators, and it's been something we've been working really hard on for about the last month. It's called the Multi-Employer Pension Recapitalization and Reform Plan. It's really just an attack.
What do they mean by multi-employer?
So a multi-employer plan, for example, if you have like an operating engineer, a crane operator might work for 3 or 4 different contractors over the course of a year, or more than that. I mean, we have members who get, a dozen W-2s at the end of January for all the contractors. They get called out for a 5-day job here, a 2-month job there. But a pension fund, all their money that goes into their retirement goes into one place. It might be the contributions might come from multiple employers, which is the multi-employer angle of this. The single employer version would be like United or American. And there used to be, what's happening here is basically the same thing that was done. These regulation changes were done to the single employer plan, I think about 15 or maybe 20 years ago. And it eradicated single employer pension plans. I mean, they did this, and now they're saying, we can do this. We did it on the single employer side. They wiped out the single employer pension side. That and, venture capital and things like that, moving in and taking over companies and putting them into bankruptcy and then bringing them out without unions and, just not paying the pensions and things like that. But it's bad news. Multi-employer pension recapitalization and reform plan. Sounds really cute, but it's horrible. If you're in a union, if you have a pension, look it up. Call your senators. Tell them it's a load of bull and not to fall for it.
All right, now our usual pension guru comes once a month, Jeff Johnson. We take a deep dive on pensions. We're usually doing public pensions, and it's really geeky territory.
Oh yeah.
But generally, a theme comes, a resounding theme every time we have the discussion, Ed, is that there's not a lot of support for employees' pension rights because, relatively speaking, so few people have pensions. I personally believe, I'm a little lefty, everyone should have a pension, and that the model that Jeff Johnson's members have, we should all get, because I got bad news for you folks. You're going to get old. The alternative is even worse to getting old. So you need to have some kind of money when you retire, and it to be totally dependent on just like investments in the stock market, et cetera. At a 401, there could be a crash coming right around the corner. There's no real protection for that.
There certainly is a lot of criticism of pensions, and there is a difference between public pensions and private pensions, where one is paid through taxes and one is not paid through taxes. And the multi-employer pension plans are typically private pension plans. The plan that we participate in is a private plan. I will say that the man who basically created the 401k, he's been interviewed several times in like Forbes and Fortune magazine, things like that over the past couple of years. And he always says the 401k was never meant to be a standalone approach to retirement savings. It was supposed to work with a healthy Social Security plan and then pensions, which were common at that time, and then other retirement savings. But he comes out now and denounces the kind of the prevalence of 401ks as the sole vehicle for retirement savings, because it's just not enough. I think there are between 40 and 50% of full-time workers in the United States right now that don't have anything saved for retirement. Wow. The average amount of retirement savings, I wish I could remember the number off the top of my head, but I think that there are 80% of full-time American workers that have $60,000 or less saved for retirement. It's a problem. And what do you hear? Every time that we want to go out and pour a bunch of money into something or give massive business tax credits, the solution to make the books balance is cut back on Social Security and Medicare.
Yeah, isn't that interesting? There was, and then it's usually, I think Social Security is actually untouchable. I say that and I touch wood when I say that, but I remember George Bush briefly talked about doing it in 2004, backed off immediately. Donald Trump hasn't talked about it.
Mitch McConnell and Paul Ryan. I mean, that was Paul Ryan's dream back in the day. And when the big corporate tax cut came, I mean, there were minimal benefit to workers, and a lot of people actually made less money or saw less money and paid more in taxes. But when that happened, it was kind of like, okay, we're cutting out like 20% of our federal revenue by doing this, so just wait for it. Within the next couple of months, they're going to say, well, we can't afford these entitlement programs. And that's what happened. I think it was like 6 weeks later that Mitch McConnell came out and said, we're going to have to reform these plans, can't afford them. It's like, you know why we can't afford them? Because Amazon's not paying taxes.
Yeah.
Or, I mean, that's just one example. But yeah, I mean, these things, people have to be able to retire, because if people retire or can't work anymore and they don't have any money, it's not like you can send them out to pasture. Something has to happen. There's got to be a social safety net for people like that. So, it's going to require federal resources. And I think we saw the abuse of that under Governor Rauner here with folks who have developmental disabilities. He slashed and burned the budget for all those things so that there weren't day programs for these people. There weren't job programs, training programs, things to fund, special care. And it's not like these people went away. They fell into need in other parts. I mean, the need is there, and the government exists to help people who are a little bit down on their luck or who need more resources than they can bring to bear. And it's going to happen. You got to take care of them here, or you're going to be taking care of them somewhere else. I mean, look at mental health compared to the prison population.
I would caution anybody when the word reform is used in connection with anything, particularly the state of Illinois, look out, because it means taking it from people who really need it and giving it to someone else. Generally, that's what reform is. So they go, let's do pension reform.
Yeah.
So they're going to take some geezer who's living on a pension, make them pay more in health benefits or what have you.
And I'm not making a storm in a teacup here. This is the retirement of 10 million people we're talking about, and they're looking to wipe it out. So
are there any champions standing up on the behalf of the pensioners? You mentioned two Republican senators, Lamar Alexander, Chuck Grassley, who are proponents of the bill.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anybody fighting it?
Yeah, I mean, there are a couple of different pension reform plans that are kind of floating around in the Senate right now, and a lot of people on the Democratic side are pushing for other plans. There was a small plan that dealt with the mine workers pension fund, and then there's something called the Butch-Lewis Act that would help some of these funds through federal loans and some other things like that. But it's funny because all of you're wiping out 87% of the healthy funds to help 13% that are unhealthy, and it basically doubles the payout that the people in that unhealthy population would get. And so that allows the people that are behind all this to say, we got to help these people, and that's what they're doing. But they're trying to help the Teamsters. The Teamsters have come out against this plan. Everybody's fighting it. It's it's a knife in the heart of retirement, but it also wipes out union employers, and it would weaken unions, and that's what it is. That's what it's supposed to be. So,
all right, we'll be following this one as the year unfolds. Before I let you go and bring our reefer expert on, I have to ask you, what are you optimistic as you head into the year for the unions? We have a presidential race. We have Democratic primaries. Still has to be figure out who the Democratic candidate. Are you coming into this year optimistic, or are you pessimistic? How are you feeling about things?
It's hard to go into a year pessimistic. I don't find myself really approaching too many things pessimistic. I think we've got a lot of challenges ahead. Local 150, the union that I'm a member of, we have a breakdown of about 50% Republican members, 50% Democratic members. And I think right now the undecided portion of that membership is very small. I think right now people know which way they're going. And this is going to be a very, very divisive election nationally. And we've got to deal with that within our own membership as well, through providing information on issues that are pertinent to us. We're not in the business as a union of telling our members how to vote on social issues, be it abortion, gay marriage, religious rights, whatever. That's not what they pay us to do. They pay us to be watchdogs on workers' rights issues and infrastructure and things like that. So we take that interest closest to heart when we're doing political endorsements. And it veers to one side of the political aisle right now more than the other. And we'll have a lot of members that are not really comfortable with that, and it's going to be a challenge. We, just figuring out how to communicate facts to members, because the president has done a hell of a job of going out and saying, these people are going to tell you I'm bad, but I'm not. I'm out there for you. And then when somebody's like, he's lying, he's hurting you, they say, hey, that's what he told us you were going to say.
Yeah.
And, crazy like a fox. You know what I mean? I can't understand it.
Yeah, crazy like a fox. Well, literally, you just got finished talking about how there's a Republican bill that would hurt pensioners.
This is a great example for people to see this is what's happening. These things don't originate on one side. They only come from one party. So take for it what you will.
I'll throw this out there. I don't know if I had this conversation with you. I think I may have had it with you. I can't remember. I've had so many conversations that we were talking about the General Motors strike, UAW, and Bernie Sanders went and marched with the strikers. Donald Trump did not. It was a Tribune reporter.
He doesn't like to walk. He would just ride along in his golf cart.
Waddle along, Donald John Trump. Anyway, and yet there were some workers on strike who said they supported Trump.
Yeah.
And so when the reporter asked them, well, what about Bernie Sanders? He walked with you. And he goes, well, that's just what politicians do.
Right.
And I'm like, what can you do, Ed Maher? Dude walked with you.
Yeah. The problem is you're trying to make sense of it. And you can't,
I mean, the guy has a point. It was like a political act. Obviously, Bernie was looking to pick up support. So, yeah, it was a political act. But he was there,
He's turned America into teams. There's like two teams, and people, I think, instinctively like to be a part of a team. So it's us against them, except them is the other half of America.
Well, when you talk to, let's say, the them part of your union that is Democrat, do you have a sense of which Democratic candidate is doing the best, or is it all over the map?
I think we're still kind of waiting to see, and we've got a lot of work to do with our members to take the temperature of our members. I know that there are some that are very unpopular within our membership. I'm not going to get into that just yet, but I think that we'll probably figure something out here. I don't know. Pretty soon. We're working with our international. We're doing a lot of polling, and we're trying to make the most educated decision that best reflects our members' values and what we've got to protect and things like that. But to be determined. I'll talk to you maybe next time I come back. I'll have some more info. Sorry for that total lame answer on that one. Well, I try not to do that to you.
It was a little of a duck. It wasn't even a duck and a dodge.
It was a tease.
It was a tease. It's called a tease.
More to come.
More to come.
A tease.
Tease. A duck and a dodge is different.
That's me, Ben.
It's a tease. Ed Maher the tease.
Get your mind out of the gutter.
And my mind is out of the gutter. And we have much reefer discussion ahead of us. Lisa Solomon here, and she's brought a mystery guest, Ed Maher, mystery guest on the Ben Joravsky Show.
Is her name Mary Jane?
Whoa, Ed Maher. We get Zanies next week.
Hey-o. Thank you.
Good.
Thank you very much.
So we'll let Ed Maher leave the building. We'll bring Lisa Solomon and mystery guest on when we return.
The Ben Joravsky Show is supported by Northwestern University's part-time master's program in literature and liberal studies. Students learn from dynamic and diverse faculty as they build advanced skills for critical analysis, writing, and research. Evening classes are held on Northwestern's Evanston and Chicago campuses. The spring quarter application deadline is January 15th. Learn more at sps.northwestern.edu/masters.
Hey, everybody, what you're about to hear are the piano stylings of Jeff Manuel. Man, listen to Jeff go. Jeff Manuel has been playing piano around Chicago for years. He's played for conventions, for celebrities, played in basement bars with blues bands. He's played at prestigious social clubs, fine restaurants, and in the intimacy of private homes. Book Jeff Manuel at jeffemanuelpianist.com. Don't worry, I'll spell his name at the end of this commercial. You know what Chicago Magazine said? They said that Jeff Manuel is, quote, as comfortable with Chopin as he is with Cole Porter. He's excellent and his performance is joyous. He offers an elegant stream of compositions and interpretations that entertains the mind but won't hurt the ears. To hear more of Jeff Manuel's work and to book Jeff for your next event, go to jeffmanuelpianist.com. I'm going to spell it out for you, people. J-E-F-F. M as in Mary, A, N as in Nancy, UELPIANIST.com. Take it away, Jeff Manuel.
Hey, commercial break's over. Welcome back to the Ben Joravsky Show, live from the Chicago Sun-Times.
Lisa Solomon is in the studio. She is our resident reefer expert. I just saw you yesterday at the reader retreat.
Oh, that was great. A lot of fun. Great team we have.
Yeah, and we did the zip, zap, zop thing, man. Zip, 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 zip. And he still can't
Still haven't heard an explanation on what this is.
All right, Lisa, could you help us out here? So it's a game. It's a theater game. Wait, mystery guest, you're not allowed to talk until you've been officially. Mystery guest is like, I know what it is. But it's a game, right? Miles Porter knows how to play this game. So everybody gets in a circle, and the first person goes zip. Wait, go zip. Wait, don't you go zip? And then the other person goes zap. Yeah, and then I go zap. And then, wait, I shouldn't have done it to the mystery guest. I go to you, and now you have to do zip.
Zip.
Yeah, but you got to point at someone.
Oh, zip.
Zap.
Well, this is great podcasting content here.
Anyway, man, we did that at the reader. It took me a while for me to get it. I'm a little slow. Everybody knows that. And by then, I was out of the game.
Yeah, you were out pretty quickly.
Oh, man, I was out so fast. Ben, leave. Oh, God.
I was a newbie. I was in there for the final 8, I think.
You're very intense. I saw a side of Lisa Salmon I did not realize existed. Lisa Salmon, like, threw an elbow, said something about his mother.
Oh, wow.
My God.
Okay.
Dang,
Laser focus. That's what it's all about.
Anyway, before we bring on the mystery guest, you got an update for me, D?
I think you created a monster here, Ben. People on the YouTube live stream chat, you guys are all awesome. How's it going? Yeah, they keep calling me Dr. Doobie. Look at this. We got
Dr.
Stephen, Dr. Doobie in the mix, coming at you with another fat rip of dank local news. Stephen, come on. Dragon Slayer, when is the Benny J Show going to get some merch, like some nice prescriptions of White Lightning Reefer from Dr. Doobie? Guys, it's not my name. I'm Dennis.
Back home and all, they call him Dr. Doobie.
We always love it when you join the live stream chat. If you're on the download, you should join us and listen live sometime and weigh in on the YouTube live stream chat. Our good friend Jeff Biss has joined us, going back and forth with our uber left-wing listeners. Good times.
Yeah.
Join the Ben Joravsky Show live stream chat. I'm not Dr. Doobie.
I love my uber left-wing listeners. All right, Lisa Solomon, please introduce our mystery guest.
All right. Sitting next to me here is Amy Nathan, co-founder of Growmentum Lab. They are an incubator for people from communities affected mostly by the war on drugs to help them get into the business. I'll let her tell you more about it because she can speak about it so much better than I can. Before we move on to the social equity component, though, I want a couple minutes to talk about why legal weed. If you're going to use cannabis, there are reasons to get it from a licensed dispensary.
As opposed to getting it from Nickelback Bernie.
I don't know, Nickelback Bernie. Maybe he's growing clean product. Yeah. But that's one of the big issues. So when you're buying cannabis from a dispensary, you know it has been tested by a third-party lab. It's being tested for all types of contaminants, fungus, mold, pesticides. You don't want to be smoking that stuff because some stuff that you can touch becomes highly toxic when you breathe it in, when you heat it and ingest it. So you don't want to do that. So that leads me into a possible reason that there is this huge flower shortage. Because I got to tell you, the shortage of flower, which is the raw bud, the dried bud that you could buy and smoke, you can roll it, they sell pre-rolls, or you can put it in your bong or your one hit or whatever it is, your vape, certain vapes that you can vape bud from. There's a lot of talk that there were a couple of huge crops that tested dirty, meaning they had too much pesticide, too much mold, or something else in it. This is not confirmed directly, but a lot of people say, yeah, my friend's at this company, and that's true. So what happened was they couldn't sell it as flour. They couldn't turn it into pre-rolls. They couldn't sell it by the eighth. They needed to process it and use this really high-tech equipment that pulls out all those contaminants. It is serious high-tech equipment used in the cannabis industry. So that's why you could still get vape cartridges and edibles, because they could make the oils and sell it that way. But it could kill you. And there's also talk that that's part of the vape issue. It wasn't just the vitamin E, but there were some contaminants on products.
All right. Now, let me just play devil's advocate for a moment. All right. Now, I just want to start by saying I am not in any way advocating that people go back to Nickelback Bernie and buy it illegal. I'm not advocating that, listeners, okay? N-O-T. Not. But I'm just going to play devil's advocate with you. When I hear you talk about how dangerous illegal weed is because it's not...
some of it.
Some of it.
Not all.
Okay. I'm just reminded what people have been saying forever. People have been smoking illegal weed since forever,
right.
Including some people that I know. And so why should they believe the industry when the industry says illegal weed is bad for you because it's not regulated, when in fact up until, a week ago, they were smoking illegal weed.
Right. So not all of it's bad for you. You've got people that I'm sure are doing hydroponic grows with organic fertilizer, and it's a good, clean product. Mm-hmm. It's not tested, so if you're using it as medicine and you need a certain amount of THC or CBD or other components, you're not sure from crop to crop what it is. When you're buying it at a dispensary, it's labeled. So if you're buying it from one of these budding entrepreneurs that I'm hearing are hanging out around dispensaries selling their flower to people who can't get it in the dispensary, ask a lot of questions. You know, you've got a lot of listeners that probably only buy organic produce, but yet they're not asking their local weed person they're buying it from, what pesticides are you using? So you might think you're clean and healthy. Ask questions. Be an informed consumer.
All right.
You know, you got to know what you're getting.
Yeah, fair enough. Although the notion of an informed consumer when dealing with an illegal product is kind of far-fetched. Amy, I mean, it's kind of like a contradiction in terms, is it not?
It is.
It is. We've all been living in a whole different world. It's a new day. We're seeing with 2020.
Yeah.
Imagine that.
Yeah. So you here? Are you taking notes, Dennis?
I took them.
All right, you took notes. Okay. I was asking some of these questions on behalf of a few people close to me.
But would you actually be buying bootlegged gin from your neighbor's bathtub today?
Right. Moonshine's a perfect example and analogy.
You wouldn't.
Yeah.
Because you'd be like, well, wait a minute here. What's going on here? I don't know that I really want to be drinking from my neighbor's bathtub.
No, in general, I believe there's a role for government to play in ensuring that the products we're ingesting, eating, consuming are healthy for us. And in general, I would have more trust in buying a product that has been inspected by someone who knows about it, as opposed to just buying it from Billy Bob on the street. So that's just how I go about it in general. So yeah, it's one of the, there were so many reasons, and this gets in the heart of what you're going to talk about. There were so many, Lisa's heard me on this subject, there were so many reasons why I wanted marijuana legalized. I could list
Cannabis.
Oh man, I was going to call it reefer, and I was trying to dress it up. What's the difference between marijuana and cannabis?
I'm going to let Amy take that one.
Well, it's the same product, but marijuana has with it all sorts of stereotypes, stigma, and actually racist issues that have to do with keeping the plant away from the thought of overturning prohibition of it.
So in other words, if I say cannabis, we're one step removed from the drug wars?
Oh, yeah. We're turning the tide completely on the drug wars.
I'm really struggling with the cannabis thing. I'll get to it,
It's just the name of the plant.
No, I know, but it's just sort of like cannabis, man. All right, but for the sake of this discussion, we'll call it cannabis.
How about this? Entrepreneurs. Instead of entrepreneurs,
entrepreneurs.
Oh, okay.
Man.
I like that.
Yeah. All right.
That's good.
That's the T-shirt you can get.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
So when I was talking about the reasons that I wanted marijuana, cannabis legalized, reefer legalized, is that number one at the list was it was so unfairly, the laws were so unfairly enforced. That was my number one reason. And I just felt it was so hypocritical of our country to essentially have cannabis, reefer, legal for white people, but illegal for black people, which is basically what it was for the last, 50 years. Or not even that, but definitely the last.
50 years. 50 years for sure, but even before that as well. 50 years that we really have good data on it. But it was basically 4-1. People would be minority, black, brown, people would get arrested relative to white people for the exact same thing. In this area, 7-1.
And so how is the law legalizing going to change that?
Oh, well, for starters, there's a very big element of it that is about social justice, and that is specifically for something that would have been considered a crime before January 1st. Today, that's considered legal. So all the people who offended that crime at that point, those records are in process of being expunged. Many of them have already been expunged. Some people have done their time and they're still living with a cloud over their head where they can't get access to jobs, they can't get access to loans, they can't get access to housing. The list goes on. It impacts the rest of their life. So that is what's being that's been overturned, that's been changed. So that's part one of the component. The second thing that the statute does is it actually creates a favorability towards people from those communities or that were impacted in that way towards applying for licenses and getting access to becoming owners in this space. And that's what we're here to really help with.
And there's another part to that. So even if someone's record is expunged, if they've done time, they've got this gap in their work history, and people are asking, where were you? So we need to remove that stigma too, because someone of color who went to jail for having one joint should not, have their life ruined when you've got white kids in the suburbs getting caught with a lot more than that, and they get a little slap on the wrist. It's so inequitable.
Or just were never slapped on the wrist. They were just they're just allowed to do it. So yeah.
Oh, some spent thousands and thousands of dollars on attorneys because they had that.
Yeah.
That option.
Yeah, I could tell you some stories about Iowa, but whatever. We'll leave that alone. So all right. So 7-1 was. Oh no, here's the question I had for you. So let's say they expunge the record, but it doesn't deal with what you were just getting at. When the employer calls, calls in Benny and says, "I'm looking at your record, and it seems as though you just were non-existent for years 2010 to 2011. Where were you, Benny?"
It's a gap. It's a gap. Gap in employment. I've been a manager in large-scale corporations before, and that's the first thing I'm looking at when I look at somebody's resume is where have they been, what they've been doing. A lot of times you're talking to someone who's female, you're like, oh, they were probably taking care of their kids. But still, you don't really know, and so you have to ask questions and ask what skill sets they learned during those gap years.
And so what protection is there for a prospective employee who doesn't reveal that he or she was in jail?
Well, there's no protection, but with this law, there's a favorability. There are all sorts of workforce development programs right now in the works because these dispensaries and all the other organizations, all the other companies in this entire sector. So there are many different verticals. There are grows, there are infusers, there are
security
dispensaries,
companies.
There's security, there are ancillary companies like security companies and all these different goods and services that have to supply these different plant touching organizations. There's an entire industry that's burgeoning here right now. And so there's a lot of favorability to people who happen to know the product and who have an experience. And those items are not going to be looked at in the same scrutinized way that they would be if you were going to go into banking or healthcare or something else.
No, I agree. That's a great point. But people wanting to get back into other industries, there is a lot of work to be done to remove those stigmas, to normalize it, because you've got their managers often, being people who've smoked for years. They just didn't get caught.
Right.
All right, now let's break some of these down. Grow and infusers. Talk about those two.
So there are 5 different verticals. One is really sort of a catch-all for everyone who supports these different verticals. But the verticals are sort of sectors within the industry that are required in an entire value chain or an ecosystem, let's say. So somebody's got to grow the stuff. Illinois is a very unique situation because of this law and the way that intrastate commerce goes. You can't get this product outside of the state. Now you can, but that would be considered illegal. So it has to be grown here. And then if you're going to use anything that's like a cartridge for a vape, or you're going to have an edible, or you're going to use it in any fashion other than the flower itself, it's infused. So it becomes infused or processed product. It's just a processor. We here in the Midwest have so many CPG, consumer product goods, it's really natural to us to be able to have laboratories to learn how to create new products. And there will be a lot of really great innovation and product development as a result. And then you have the retail outlet, which is the dispensary. And then you've got the logistics provider, which also Chicago's a huge hub of logistics provider. We've got amazing, Olive Harvey College just focuses on logistics. We have so much talent here in Chicago and across Illinois in all of these verticals that are not part of the weed business. Now we sort of are layering on weed, and we just have an explosion of opportunity for jobs, for new businesses, for innovation.
What's a logistics provider in the weed business?
Well, Lisa was talking about how you have to have weed that's been kept at a certain temperature so that it doesn't collect mold on it, right? So there have to be very specific requirements that, your typical person with a pickup truck who might be transporting it from the grow facility to the dispensary may not have unless they're meeting certain stipulations. Plus, they've got to have security. They have to have certain specifications that just the regular mom and pop delivery person for Amazon today doesn't have. And so they've got to meet that requirement, and the state has to also license that as well.
So every one of these things is licensed by the state?
Every one of those ones that I just named, those 4 items, grow, dispense, infuse, and transport, all of those areas have to be licensed. The only ones that you could have applied for until now has been dispensary. The application for the other 3 just came out 2 days ago, actually. And then besides that, you've got the 5th, which is everything else. That is a lawyer, that is a real estate broker, that is a marketing person, an accountant. If you've got a specialty in this business, and it requires specialization, there's an entire different tax accounting that's required for these businesses. There's entirely different ways that you have to deal with it because you have to be so above board and so transparent and so understanding how the dynamics of a very highly regulated industry works is critical for anybody who wants to venture into this. But we need insurance. We need all sorts of products. You know, when you think about the gold rush, people are calling this the green rush. When you think about the gold rush from, 170 years ago in San Francisco, what brand do you still associate with that?
Levi's.
There you go. Well,
I got it right?
they were selling jeans. They weren't selling, they don't have any association really with gold, but they were ancillary to that industry. And those are where people are really believing is going to be the big hit. That's where the most innovation is going to come from. That's where the most outstanding brands are going to come from. We just don't even know.
Wow. Damn, if I could figure that out, I'd invest in that company, be a rich man in about 10 years.
Well, you could just invest in all the entrepreneurs who are really going into it.
Okay, with all my millions of dollars I make from the Chicago Reader, I'm going to kick some of that money in. All right, you talk about insurance, you talk about accounting. Where do people go to get training to be an insurance or an insurance person or an accountant in the cannabis industry?
Well, I can speak to legal. There are certain people that are offering CLEs, the continuing education credits for attorneys, that talk about the industry. There are companies that have CME and CEU programs. Those are credits for medical professionals so they can understand cannabis and how it works as a medicine. So the accounting I can't speak to, maybe AB can, but this is cropping up. And
it's happening everywhere. But and I know that it's happening in insurance also. My home and auto provider was telling me that he's being approached to actually take some continuing education in this. But more specifically about plant touching, for instance, there are a lot of programs that have been created. So first of all, the state created a provision called responsible vendor. And that is anybody, there are 26 organizations that have been approved to teach how to be an operator in a dispensary right now. And those organizations are the only ones who can do that legally. In the future, I would anticipate they'll have a similar designation for people who can teach how to grow. At Growmentum, we'll be teaching entrepreneurship, and we'll also be teaching all the different aspects of working with the plant for the entrepreneur who wants to understand what their business process is going to be or really wants to focus on developing a brand, a specific product, maybe a strain or something specific like that. So there are many different organizations. Part of them will be the community colleges that are going to really be the only ones with the designation to teach some of this plant touching attributes. But as Lisa said, the ancillary, the sky is the limit. With ancillary, you can learn about things from your profession or from other states or online. There are so many different ways that you could slice that.
And university programs are cropping up, unintended, all over the place. So we've got Oakton Community College, is it Western Michigan University, that has the hemp growing program. So they are seeing this as a way to attract students because it's where a lot of these young people want to go. That's what they want to go into. They're excited about the green rush and they want to be a part of it.
We at Growmentum are on the advisory team for Chicago City Colleges to help them develop their workforce development program as well. I know Chicago State has something in addition. So.
Lisa, the last time in the show, some people called in with a question. I didn't have the answer, so either one of you can answer it. I would appreciate it. How are the dispensaries dealing with payroll?
It's a great question. So there are certain payroll packages. So let me actually unpack that a little bit. For people who don't know, for people who have not been in a dispensary, generally this industry has no banking attributes. You can't walk in there and use your credit card. You can use your debit card, but you can't use a credit card. And that is because credit cards are insured by the FDIC, and the federal government can't be. It's still considered a Schedule I drug.
Illegal.
Right. Federally, it is legal.
Yeah.
So
illegal.
Illegal federally,
yes.
but legal on the state
Correct.
level. And so as a result, banking is a real problem. The Safe Banking Act has made some inroads, but it hasn't gotten far enough.
Safe Banking, it's a state of Illinois act.
Well, there's a safe banking from Illinois, but what we really need is safe banking nationally, because the FDIC, the banks that are insured by the FDIC, which is most of the big banks you know of, unless you're a state chartered bank, you're really unable to transact. And so most of the dispensaries, if they bank with a large, bank, it's really difficult. They really can't use credit cards. So as a result, they also have a challenging time paying vendors, paying everyone. And so there are certain workforce products out there that are basically computer programs that they use across different dispensaries in lots of different states to help get their employees paid.
Okay, so in general, that is true. However, there are companies on the West Coast that have overseas incorporations that are able to do these financial transactions cashless. So they're much more popular on the West Coast. The companies in Illinois are very hesitant to get involved with them, but the cash is an issue. And I was talking to a lot of dispensaries ahead of time, asking if they were going to move to these cashless ATMs or these other companies which will actually run credit cards. And they just really weren't ready to go there. And there was a very unfortunate incident on Monday,
of course,
where one of the Chicago dispensaries was robbed. I don't know if there was any staff in there at the time. I'm hoping there wasn't. It's been reported in the news. They think there was a key card used to gain entry, so I'm assuming there's an ongoing investigation, which is why not much has been shared. But, there's too big of a risk. So the federal government really needs to take that into account, the safety of everyone in the industry, of all shoppers.
I mean, we're here in Chicago. It's a highly weaponized place.
Well,
And,
okay, I'm still not understanding this. So let's say I have the Benny J dispensary, and I have Miles works for me, and Dennis works for me, and I have to pay them. So
transfer funds to their account. It's like a PayPal for the cannabis industry.
you
These
can do
companies
that, I got
exist.
you.
These companies
You can
exist.
pay your suppliers
the
that
federal
way.
government is not putting these companies out of business. Because there was concern about a year ago, I want to
Yes,
say
a
2 years
RICO
ago, I was interviewing, this was before illegal recreational reefer, so I would be medical dispensaries. And I remember this fella came on the show, and he was saying, I don't know how I'm going to be able to pay anybody because the feds, this was date when Jeff Sessions was the attorney general.
Mm-hmm.
He had this whole thing, Amy, about he was like going to destroy the marijuana industry.
he was reversing what they called the Cole memo.
Yes, very good. You know your stuff.
This
The
is
Cole
why
memo.
Amy's the mystery
Right.
guest.
Very well done. Yes, the Cole memo was just from the Obama days where they're going to look the other way.
Exactly.
It's like don't ask, don't tell, and reefer. Well, we're just not going to pay attention to the fact.
He was not that kind of guy.
Sessions was not
Right,
that kind of guy.
exactly.
So you go, yeah, I'm ripping up that Cole memo, and I'm going to come after them because marijuana is the reason. Cannabis is the reason.
Well, he would have been saying
He would have
marijuana.
said marijuana.
Exactly.
Or maybe he would have called it reefer.
But they've walked
back
that
home
back.
in Alabama.
They've walked that
they
back.
walked
since,
it back.
since then. Yeah,
Is
he's
that
no longer
right?
there.
Yeah,
So-
that is true, but
so
not
they-
for that reason.
Can I address the marijuana word again? Because there are people that use it as a regular term. They don't feel that there's really any racist part. They feel like that fell by the wayside. It just became a common term. Like if you look into the history of the swastika, thousands of years ago, it was actually this powerful, positive spiritual symbol.
Yeah, but that was
the Nazis
reversed.
took. So,
But anyway.
yeah. But so it's very questionable. You have
when you do Nazi analogies. I just warned guests about that in general, but
So-
go ahead.
All right, let's erase that if we
Yeah,
can.
right.
But you'll hear people on both sides of the argument for marijuana. But
All
in
right,
general,
fine.
if you steer clear
Cannabis,
of it, you're
reefer,
safe.
whatever. The point is that
The green stuff.
The green stuff is that Sessions is no longer Attorney General, but it was not for his position on cannabis that Donald Trump got rid of him. Just want to make that clear to all of our listeners out there. It had nothing to do with that. So in other words, okay, so they can meet their payroll. There are ways that they can meet their
There are
payroll.
ways, yeah.
And they can pay their bills,
Yeah.
et cetera, and so forth. So the federal ban on legal marijuana or legal reefer has not really burdened the industry that much.
It has burdened the industry tremendously because it's an awful customer experience.
Yeah.
I mean, to have to use your cash, really, what we really need to be doing is moving to more of a cashless, just like Lisa was saying, a cashless society where that's just not an issue and you're not walking around with it.
Yeah.
It's also for the people that don't want to think of themselves as using drugs and have a medical cannabis card or truly using it for medication. And when they're forced to go in with a wad of cash and walk out with a bag that's been stapled shut, it's harder for them to accept that, yes, this is medicine and I'm okay, I'm not using illicit drugs.
All right, now let's address the issue of what you call social equity. It was really upsetting to a lot of people, myself included, the symbolism when cannabis became legal on January 1st. The owners of the major dispensaries were white guys, and for years and years and years, as you were pointing out, Amy, the victims of the war on drug were basically black people. And so it just was so symbolically wretched to take a look at when legalization happened once again. You know what I'm saying, Amy?
Yeah, they did a bad job. They had an opportunity. Those companies had an opportunity to handle it differently, and they didn't. They should have sent other people. They should have sent all the women or all the people on their staff that are diverse, because they do have diversity among them. Mm-hmm. But it was just a bad photo op. But it's important to understand why and what that was about. Mm-hmm. So for starters, the most important thing to the state is that whoever is commercially involved in this product, that they are doing it at a standard, and that is a high standard, and that they have their operating procedures, everything labeled, you know what you're getting, every single transaction, every single thing is tip-top known. And when the state, it took all these years for the state to get comfortable with those who have been operating this way, to operate on this level, that finally they said, you know what, we trust you. It's a really big deal for the government to decide to trust you to do this right. And they weren't going to at all open up a dispensary or any other access unless they were confident that the people who were delivering it were going to deliver it at that level. So those people, as we know, because that's how it all started, were 96% white men. That's who they were. So the question is they were in a quandary. They were like, well, on one hand, we could delay the implementation and not make it January 1st and wait until we had cultivated and given people all this access, and then the consumer was going to suffer. So the consumer was not going to be allowed to buy it, even though it was legal as of January 1st. So what does that do? What that does is that instigates or perpetuates the illicit market to continue to operate. And they wanted to be able to create some sort of a customer supply. So they were stuck in this situation. And I'm still not saying that it was the best situation. And I do think that what should have happened is that they should have incentivized certain behaviors of those companies, not just for the photo op that day that you're referring to, but more importantly, they could have required them to put employee ownership in place. They could have required them to hire 60% from disproportionately impacted area, just like the stipulation will be later on when on May 1st the announcement of the new companies are that have been accepted. It's the same stipulations. Why not require them or incentivize and say, look, you companies, we will relax our taxes on you if you put these things, or we will give you opportunities to develop in areas that you wouldn't have had opportunities, or we will help fund certain operations, whatever it is. Mm-hmm. They could have incentivized those behaviors, and they didn't. And to me, that was a miss. That was a miss on behalf of social equity. That was a miss for everyone, really.
And so when did you say the next licenses go out? What date did you say?
So the next wave of dispensary applicants, they just had to submit their applications on January 2nd, and we will find out who wins on May 1st.
May 1st.
And there were 700 applicants. Wow. That represents 4,000 dispensaries. And of them, 600 of those 700 had a social equity ownership component to it. So that's about 88%. I don't know. I don't do math that quickly. But that has social equity. So it sounds to me like everybody heard the message loud and clear.
So if there's somebody listening out there who spent time in jail for getting busted with reefer, or has a gap on his or her resume because of time in jail for reefer, or even if he hasn't been in jail but wants to take advantage of the legalization of cannabis, how can your group help them?
Well, first of all, if they are interested in applying for one of these licenses, or if they're interested in maybe starting a company that is ancillary in nature, they can apply. Well, first of all, they can come to us regardless if they really were in that situation. We are doing a lot of advising and helping them get their applications completed. We've had we did this last quarter with a ton of different programs and one-on-one coaching. We brought experts who are from the other part of town who have this expertise both in cannabis and in very functional areas that really came and helped them understand how to get that section of their application done, and then also reviewed applications for them. That's what we're doing before the licenses applications are available. We are also very interested, if there are people who are interested in investing in social equity companies, we are matching to the social equity applicants, because there are some incredible business ideas out there, incredible people who have amazing experience that just haven't had the opportunity. So we're doing that as well. And then finally, once our accelerator program begins, after those first applications have been accepted, apply for the accelerator, and we're going to help you launch your business quickly and with the means that you need.
What do you think the potential for growth here is, Lisa?
Growth in the industry in general, or
in terms for in the social equity aspect?
I think it's great. I think a lot of people are hearing what they need to hear, and then we have wonderful organizations like Gromentum Lab that are supporting people, and there are other law firms that are working with people that have them focused on social justice and social equity. Don't know if they're doing any pro bono work. We can look into that. We can get some attorneys on, but yeah, I think we're moving in the right direction.
All right, so Amy, folks want to get in touch with you. Tell folks how to get into Gromentum Labs.
Gromentumlab.com. There's no W in that. GROMENTUM Lab. One. That's singular, not plural.
Got it. All right, very good. Amy Nathan, Lisa Solomon, thank you so much for coming in. I appreciate it. And also want to thank Ed Maher.
And hey, we got thanks to the YouTube live stream chat and our good friend Steven, we have a name for this segment now. We didn't know what to call it, really. I think I called it, a guide to getting high? But thanks to our good friend Steven.
Dr. Doobie.
Oh, yeah. We're having fun going back and forth with that on the live stream chat.
Dr. Doobie.
Not a doctor, and that's kind of cool sounding. But the name we're giving this segment, thanks to Steven, we got to give him a shout out. Now, we often do the deep dive here on the Ben Joravsky Show, but people, get ready for Lisa Solomon and the Dope Dive.
That's correct. That's very good.
Thanks, Steven.
And I think of that, man.
Yeah, well.
I just go reefer expert, but I like that Dope Dive. All right, another episode of the Dope Dive with Lisa Solomon and Amy Nathan. And that's GROM as in Mary, EN as in Nancy, TUM as in Mary, LAB. How about that?
Awesome.
That's got to spell it out for people.
All right, and I'm posting some things on a Facebook page, like the movies I'm recommending. I just set it up, Lisa the Hemp Guru. Find me on Facebook, and this way, when people
Did we talk
can't
about
write it down,
stoner movies last time?
You said movies.
the informational ones, Read the People in Grass and things like that.
I was talking stoner movies. My favorite. Big Lebowski is still the best stoner movie of all time. All right, Lisa Solomon, Amy Nathan. Also want to thank Ed Maher and Miles Kampf-Lassin. Earlier in the day, Miles Porter was back from vacation, and good to have him back. And of course, the man, the myth, the legend. And as Lisa Solomon and Amy Nathan can tell you, back home in Alton, Illinois, they call him White Lightning. Give yourself a raise, Dr. D, and take it out of petty cash. See you tomorrow, everybody.
Just Dennis. All right. And remember, you can download previous Ben Joravsky shows and Vinny J bonus interviews at both Chicago Sun-Times and Chicago Reader websites and wherever else you download your favorite podcast. Downloaders, we love it when you download. We think it's great. But did you know that we live stream this program? It's true. Tuesdays through Fridays, 1 until 3 p.m. Central Time at both Chicago Sun-Times and Chicago Reader websites, the Chicago Sun-Times YouTube channel. So if you're ever downloading and you wonder, I wonder what those guys look like, go over to the YouTube channel and be unimpressed. We'll see you tomorrow.
That's correct.